Hello and welcome to today's EcoCast. Supporting, extending, and protecting virtual environments is the topic of today's event. On the EcoCast today, you'll hear from our experts at Progress, Veeam, Rubric, Druva, Rapid7, Anaconda, and Palo Alto Networks. We've got an amazing event lined up for you today. Thank you so much for joining. If you want to learn how to better support, extend, and protect your virtual environment, you're in the right place. We at ActualTech Media created the MegaCast and EcoCast event series to help educate IT professionals such as yourselves about the latest and greatest in enterprise technology to help you do it quickly and efficiently without ever having to leave your home or office, to help you get all your questions answered, solve your IT challenges, and have some fun too. We'll be giving away some valuable prizes on the event today. Now, before we get started, there's just a few things that you should know about the EcoCast. My name is David Davis of ActualTech Media, and I'll be serving as the moderator along with fellow moderator, Mr. Scott Becker. I'll be announcing the prize lineup here in just a moment, but first, I want to point out that we encourage your questions here on the event. They're in the questions tab. Many of you have already said hello, good afternoon, good morning, and we appreciate that, but we also want your technical questions. We'll be doing live Q&A sessions with each of today's experts, and we need your questions. We even have a best question prize to help further encourage your questions. I'll also have some poll questions for you during the event. If you haven't answered those poll questions before, you do it right there in the presentation window when the poll question comes up. And then I should mention, we also want this to be a social event, and you can tweet directly from your audience console using the Twitter icon there on the screen. I'll be monitoring Twitter throughout the event, and of course we appreciate you sharing what you've learned on the EcoCast. You'll find some excellent resources there in the Handouts tab of your audience console. There are ebooks, solution briefs, trial links, so make sure that you check out those resources. The prizes on the EcoCast today are 3 Amazon $500 gift cards. Of course, you must be live in attendance to qualify for the prize drawings and meet the ActualTech Media prize terms and conditions that you can find right there in your Handouts tab. We will be verbally announcing the prize winners during the event. We also have our best question prize for a $50 Amazon gift card after each of the sessions on the EcoCast today, and that means you have to ask a question to be entered into the prize drawing and meet the prize terms and conditions. All grand prize winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to ActualTech Media, and we'll reach out to the prize winners via email after the event. Again, those prize terms and conditions can be found right there in the Handouts tab. And if you win a prize, we would love to help you donate it to one of our selected charities. Over the years, we've donated thousands of dollars to the charities you see here on the screen. Thanks to generous prize winners who win a prize and just would like to help someone less fortunate. We've done a lot of that in partnership with the Gorilla Guide Book Club. This is where you can download free, easy-to-read enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. You can find a link to gorilla.guide right there in your Handouts tab. It's a great way to stay up to date on trending enterprise technology, and yes, all these books work on your Kindle, iPad, or mobile device. I encourage you to check them out over at gorilla.guide. We also want this to be a social event. You can tweet right there from your audience console using the Twitter icon, and the hashtag for today will be automatically appended. It is ATM EcoCast. I'll be following the hashtag and commenting and replying to anyone who tweets, so thank you in advance for sharing what we're doing here on the EcoCast. You can follow ActualTech Media on Twitter as well, and me, your moderator, David M. Davis. Subscribe to all the ActualTech Media social channels there, YouTube, Facebook, and the 10 on Tech podcast. You can do that right there in your audience console. And we post all of our latest and greatest content over on LinkedIn, so make sure that you follow ActualTech Media there as well. Now, another great way to win a prize is to refer your IT friends or coworkers to ActualTech Media's online event series, and you both could win a $300 Amazon gift card. We run those drawings each month, and we promise not to spam your friends or coworkers. We will send them an invitation to an upcoming list of events, and if they don't respond, we'll send them one more reminder, and if they don't respond from there, we promise not to bother them after that. You can refer your IT friends or coworkers there in the Handouts tab. It's the Refer a Friend link, and at the end of the EcoCast, you'll be automatically redirected to our Refer a Friend page as well. All right, now before we do a couple of poll questions and I introduce you to our first presenter, I want to talk for just a moment and do a little bit of stage setting here on today's topic of supporting, extending, and protecting virtual environments by answering the question, or trying to answer the question, why do I care? Why do I care about my virtual environment so much? And why do I need perhaps an ecosystem of solutions around it? Well, let's try to answer the why question first. Many of you, I know, already know the criticality of your virtual infrastructure, but just to remind those out there who might think that virtual infrastructure is old or out of date or just not that important, for most of us, the virtual infrastructure is still very critical because it runs your business critical applications. We've got ERP systems, HR, sales, manufacturing, sometimes email, file sharing. All these things are critical to the business. And it has to be always up and performing well. I think for most of us, the virtual infrastructure has just been so reliable. I'd be willing to bet that for most of us, the virtual infrastructure has been working well and for such a long time that we've sort of taken it for granted. We just assume that, like the light switch, you flip it on and the lights come on. You turn the faucet on the water comes out. It always works, and we would be really kind of taken aback if for some reason we came into work one day and just the whole virtual infrastructure was down. Now, maybe not you in IT because you know the complexities that are involved, but for those in the business, they just assume that the virtual infrastructure is always up and running. In fact, they don't even think about it. They know that those applications just always work, and they assume that they will continue to work. But at the same time, the virtual infrastructure continues to grow. Even though the hype, might be around cloud native applications, the virtual infrastructure isn't slowing down. The storage demands continue to increase. The end users in these critical applications are storing more and more data there, and it has to be protected with data protection that has a rapid recovery time objective, and they assume zero data loss, meaning ransomware would really be a disaster if it infected all the servers in the virtual infrastructure. So disaster recovery has to be in place. It must be continually tested, and you have to be able to do a mass restore in a very reasonable amount of time. Monitoring is also critical to prevent downtime in the virtual infrastructure. You need to try to prevent problems before they happen. So, as a reminder, that's why the virtual infrastructure is so critical. But what's the big challenge here? Well, we know that all those things really aren't as easy as they sound. How are we going to really accomplish all of that? Well, we need new innovations. The legacy tools, legacy backup, legacy monitoring, legacy security solutions, they just aren't going to cut it. We need new innovations. And for a variety of reasons, cloud enabled tools in some shape or form, whether it's security or data protection or DR, these can be extremely helpful to help us to be more efficient and scale. But at the same time, these things have to be affordable. The business isn't going to cut huge checks for the virtual infrastructure because they just assume that it works and it continues to work. But we need to educate them that in order for the virtual infrastructure to be successful, as it has been, it needs to be scalable for the future. And it needs to be extensible to work with other tools and applications and the cloud. It has to be secure, and we have to be able to prove the value and effectiveness of these tools and solutions to the business. And everyone needs to know that the virtual infrastructure, it isn't an island in itself. You don't install vSphere or Hyper-V and then boom, you're done, any more than any other operating system. You don't just install Windows Server and then you're done in an enterprise environment. There's a wide variety of ecosystem solutions that go around it to protect it, to secure it, to automate it, to monitor it, and more. So it's the same way here in the virtual infrastructure. It takes an ecosystem of tools. We need data protection and modern, innovative data protection and disaster recovery. We need to know that those are going to work 100%. If we do get hit with ransomware, we can't wait a couple of weeks to get our data back. You might need secure file sharing. In many companies, this is an important piece of the puzzle, and you'll be learning about a great solution on the EcoCast today. We need secure monitoring, vulnerability management, detection, and response. Security is more paramount than ever before to try to prevent these malicious attacks that are constant. We also need automation and orchestration to help make everything more efficient. We in IT are continually being pushed to do more with less, but that doesn't happen unless you start to automate things and use more efficient tools. We need troubleshooting and monitoring and visualization tools to help us prevent these types of problems, whether they're security or performance or capacity, before they happen and take down our critical applications or even to slow them down for an extended period of time. Because those critical applications are a very important piece of the virtual infrastructure puzzle. And you'll be learning about, for example, Anaconda for data science on the EcoCast today. And of course, cloud based, SaaS based solutions can really help to increase the efficiency and the scalability and the performance and the security of the virtual infrastructure. So, with all that in mind, we've got some amazing solutions being presented on today's EcoCast from Progress, Veeam, Rubric, Druva, Rapid7, Anaconda, and Palo Alto Networks. I'm looking forward to all these excellent presentations and our live Q&A sessions with each of our experts. Now, before I introduce you to our first presenter, I've got a poll question for you. I've just brought up the first poll question there on the screen, and the question is, which of these are you most looking for from the solutions being presented today? And this is a multi-select question, and honestly, I'm very interested to see the results of this question. We don't typically run this question here on the event, and I think this could really help to shape our future events. So I'd be curious to see your feedback on this, and I will share the results with everyone out there so you can kind of see how your answer stacked up with everyone else, the hundreds of IT professionals and technologists from across the United States and around the world who are represented on today's EcoCast. So lots of responses coming in. I appreciate those. If you haven't responded to one of these polls before, you do it right there in the slides window. Just select the option or the options that correspond to you and your company. All right, so this is good to see. Looks like 24% said see the product in action, see a solution, a demo, followed by 19% that said, how's it really going to solve my problem? And another 19% that said additional resources, education, and more. So thank you to everyone out there who responded to that poll, which is great because I know at least on our first two presentations here, we're going to see some live demos. So second poll, and then I'll be introducing you to our first set of presenters. The question here is simply around your time frame. You know, you're interested in potentially improving your virtual infrastructure by adding better security or protection or monitoring or cloud-based solutions that augment what the virtual infrastructure can do. So what's your time frame for taking some sort of action on that? Is it in the next 6 months, 6 to 12 months, 12 to 24, or perhaps you're not quite sure? All right, thank you to everyone who responded there to the time frame question. And with that, it's time now to kick off our EcoCast event. I'm excited now to welcome Mark Tower, Senior Product Marketing Manager, and Mark Singh, Senior Solutions Engineer, both from Progress. Mark, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
Thank you very much. Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. So this is actually serendipitous that we're first in line today because, well, there's a lot of fascinating content coming up on virtualization and virtual machines and virtual systems. I'm actually going to start us off a bit more on the basics and taking a look at what exactly is it that's underneath your virtual machines and why that matters. So I'm going to go over a few little slides giving an explanation of kind of our point, what we're talking about, how VMs and punch cards relate, why your infrastructure is important, what questions you need to ask yourself, and how to answer those questions. And then Mark Singh is going to give you a demo. So hang on for that. So first of all, and I know this is the question that everyone's been wondering about for the last 10 seconds since you saw that agenda slide, what do virtual machines have to do with punch cards? And I promise there's actually a connection. But the concept of shared computing actually isn't something that's new. Back in the old days, and when I say old days, I'd be very surprised if anyone on this call ever used a punch card. My father did, but I don't think anyone here is likely to use them. Some of us interested in computer history may have seen them or are familiar with the concept, but way back in the 50s and the 60s, when you had a giant computer, it was a mainframe that was the size of a room, and it was incredibly expensive, and it did all these calculations, which was great, but who was using it? Well, it was shared, and they didn't have networking. It wasn't anything nearly as sophisticated as what we're dealing with, but you could time share it. So there would be people who would get access to the computer, and students, for example, would be able to use the university computer, and they had a set amount of time that they could use, and that might be scheduled. So, between 12 o'clock and 12:20 or 12:30, you've got that much time to run your program and use the computer. Now, the way you built a program back then was you input it onto punch cards. And these were used for a bunch of different things, often also things like payroll, a variety of things. But the main point was this was an analog way. You could punch a bunch of holes onto a card of a standard size that would be fed into that big mainframe computer that would look at all those, that would sense where all of those holes were manually, or not manually, but mechanically detect all those holes, and that would give it a set of commands. So full programs would be a stack of cards, maybe 30, 40 inches high. Depends on what they were trying to run. So it was very important to have not only your cards in the right order, but, and this is where the warning on the bottom needs to be highlighted, it was very important that those cards be in good shape. And this has entered the popular lexicon. Do not fold, spindle, or mutilate. Folding or spindling, that's where you stick it onto a spike. You still see that in restaurants sometimes. Or mutilating it or getting it wet or doing something else in some way is going to damage the card. So big deal. What does that mean? Well, what that means is when you feed that into the system, that card reading device that's part of the mainframe is going to either chew up that card, destroy that card, or it's going to get it jammed in some way. And the impact of that is you've now damaged the infrastructure behind that computing device. And that means that not only are you unable to complete your job, you're unable to use the computer, but no one else is going to be able to use the computer. And I'm stretching the analogy slightly, obviously. I'm talking specifically about an input-output part of the system, not the entire system. But for all intents and purposes, that computer is not able to help anyone because the infrastructure is now damaged. And that's something that can be done by anyone who's not paying close attention to your cards. So like I said, it's a bit of a stretch, but I want to bring it up because I want to make a point here. First of all, shared computing is a new concept. We're far more sophisticated with it now, and you're going to hear a bunch of other people talking about the more esoteric uses of virtual machines and how they're set up. But the idea of getting a part of a machine and being able to use it for a certain amount of time or being able to use it for a particular use, that's not new. What is also the same, and what has always been the case, is that if there's a problem with the underlying infrastructure, it's not just impacting your program, it's going to impact the programs everyone else wants to run as well as everything else involved. So number one, you got to make sure that your network infrastructure is working. If there's a network infrastructure problem, whether that's something with modern equipment or whether it's something as simple as a wet card wrapped around that card reader and preventing any additional programs from being run, someone's got to fix it. Otherwise, the entire system is unavailable. And when it's the next student coming in at 12:30 who needs 30 minutes of computer time, that's a problem. If it's 50 people who are trying to use the various virtual machines running on that server, that's a bigger problem. You've got to protect your infrastructure as part of protecting your virtual environment. So let's take a quick look at the importance of network infrastructure. Obviously, virtual machines need something to run on. There's some sort of underlying hardware, and we don't tend to think about it as much anymore. It's easy just to spin up a virtual machine and get it running. But virtual machine host devices don't exist in a vacuum. That device that your virtual machine is running on is connected to other devices. It's not just one server sitting there in a closet and everything's perfectly fine. It's got inputs, it's got outputs, it's connected to other systems, it's connected to stuff upstream and downstream. This is what we call the infrastructure, all right? It's not just one device. And that infrastructure needs to be working. Otherwise, your device that your virtual machine is working on, your virtual machine host, is not going to work properly. And for that to happen, you need to have adequate availability. It needs to be up. In other words, your device and all the infrastructure around it supporting it needs to be working. It needs to have adequate computing capability. All right? If you've got too many people overstressing the processor, things are going to slow down, things are going to start crashing. It needs to have adequate memory. So whether that's RAM or whether that's hard drive storage or any other type of storage that you're using, if you don't have the memory, again, everything is going to start slowing down. And most importantly, you need bandwidth. If there's someone else who's consuming 80% of the bandwidth to watch a high-def movie on Netflix, then input and output to your virtual machine or to the device that is hosting your virtual machine is going to be slow, and that's going to impact the end users and the applications they're running. So the key here is that infrastructure issues have to be prevented. If something has happened and it's already impacting the end users, then you're too late. You know, if your system's overloading, if it's overheating, if your hard drive is full, you already have a whole lot of users who are unable to run their virtual machines, run their applications, or get the services they're looking for. So the job of an IT organization is not just to manage these VMs. That's all very, very well and cool, and you're going to hear a lot more about it in the future. But make sure that the infrastructure they're running on not only is working, but to stop problems before they hit and start causing problems. So with that said, what questions should you be asking when you're looking at your infrastructure and how it can support virtual machines? Well, number one, how many virtual machines have you got running? And this is not as easy a question as you might think. You obviously can't manage anything if you can't find it or if you don't know where it lives. And virtual machines go up and down all the time. We've had customers, in fact, that specifically were looking for a solution to find out when they'd forgotten to turn virtual machines off. One organization, they would spin up a virtual machine for training purposes, and they were paying for that. And if the trainer forgot to turn it off and decommission it, that was something that would sit in the background, chewing up money and costing them. So understanding what they've got running, how many of them, is absolutely crucial. The next piece is, okay, so you've got a certain number of virtual machines. Where are they? All right. What devices are hosting them? And again, depending on your users and on your software systems, these things can be moved. They can be migrating all over the place, and there's not generally one solid list. You don't necessarily know, and you find things like, the virtual machine got shifted to some branch office where there's 5 people, one server sitting in a closet. How it got there, no one's completely sure, but we're starting to get bandwidth and hard drive issues, and everything's delayed because it's in, Timbuktu, and the rest of the users are in Texas. So this is the sort of information you're going to need to know to troubleshoot and figure out what's going wrong with your virtual machines. And then, of course, the important part is, are the host devices actually working the way they're supposed to? Are they consuming resources within acceptable thresholds, or are they exceeding those thresholds? And this is where, again, being proactive, you want to make sure that you don't get an alert when that host device is hitting 99% hard drive usage. You want to get warning earlier so you can do something about it. And that's just one device. You want to look at everything else around it. And this is where the rest of the infrastructure comes into. Is the upstream device down? Are there bandwidth leaks? Are you not getting the bandwidth you should be? Is everything slowing down because people can't get information into and out of it? Is the server room it's in getting hot? Is the temperature getting too high? Are the fans on full blast and everything's still slowing down or starting to cause errors? There's a lot of other factors that can impact those devices, and that's something you need to pay attention to before you start dealing with the actual virtual machine issues. And one way to do this, of course, is to spot trends. If You can do some trend analysis and look at how things work over time. It makes it a lot easier to figure out what the issues are and to either get ahead of them or resolve them before they're going to impact end users. A perfect example could just be something as simple as, hey, it's nighttime over there. Everything's going to work a little bit faster because it's cooler. Or we've got a bunch of people who come in and check the news every morning. So there's a block of time where video consumption at 9 in the morning is really, really high, and you're going to see bandwidth issues. How do you resolve that? We just have a bunch of, perfect example, it's tax time. All of a sudden your demand for financial information and the demand by the accountancy groups or the accounting departments is massive. How's that impacting what you're going to do? If you have trend analysis, you can look and say, all right, this is when things happen. Here's how I can deal with it. Here's how I can prepare for it. Here's how I can mitigate any of these challenges. So with that said, how do you answer those questions? And one of the ways we strongly recommend answering them with is a tool that we make called What's Up Gold. What What's Up Gold can do is it can answer some of those questions like, where are my virtual machines? It will map your entire network, including all of your infrastructure and all of the virtual systems that are running on that infrastructure. And it creates this really nice dynamic interactive map where you can see at a glance where virtual machines are, what hosts they're living on, the status of those hosts, the status of those VMs, their relationships, any clusters, and I see everything in real time. And most importantly, you're seeing everything in context. You're not just looking at a virtual machine reporting system that tells you what's going on with your virtual machines. You're looking at what that virtual machine is running on, and you're looking at everything around it, upstream, downstream, all the other factors. And you can very easily jump from, okay, what's going on with my virtual machine to what's going on with the device underneath it with a click. You get to monitor virtual performance as well. You get not only their availability, but the CPU, the memory, the interface utilization, that's bandwidth basically, the migrations, where they're moving, and the overall server performance for the infrastructure that's supporting your virtual machines. And the best part here is that you can create custom dashboards and reports. If there are certain specific things that you particularly care about, it's trivial to put together an easy dashboard that gives you that information to run reports based on that information that can be on demand, or you can set them up to go automatically. We talked a minute ago about trend analysis. You can sit here and say, all right, how's this particular virtual machine cluster been behaving in terms of performance for the last 6 months, and you can pull that up and view that at any time. It makes it really, really easy to look at your virtual machines and their underlying infrastructure from a variety of different angles to figure out exactly what the problems are and to troubleshoot them effectively. And then finally, the big advantage, of course, of What's Up Gold is it has a very powerful and very sophisticated alerting system, and that's what's going to make your troubleshooting proactive. Like I said, you don't want to wait until it breaks. You need to know it's going to break and do something about it before that happens, and that's where alerts come in. You can set a threshold for anything: CPU usage getting too high, bandwidth usage getting too low, memory starting to hit capacities. You can set an 80% threshold or a 60 or a 70 or whatever you'd like, and then you can get an alert when that happens so you can resolve something, either free up some space, point it to some more space, move that virtual machine to another server, whatever you need to do. But you can get an alert, and that can be something that can pop up on your screen. You can get an email, you can get a text, and if you're on vacation or you've got an entire team that's handling this, it can go out through Slack or Microsoft Teams as well. So you're going to get a notification of when you have an issue or when an issue is starting to happen. And again, that's where the trends can come in too. If you happen to know that, things get really dicey on Thursdays for whatever reason, all right, that's when we can allocate more bandwidth, we can allocate more memory, we can move some of the virtual machines to more servers so things are distressed, and you can do all of that. But you can get alerted if that happens on a Wednesday, for example. So that's really, really powerful, and that's what's going to keep your infrastructure going. And you don't have to take my word for it, because Mark Singh is now going to give us a demonstration of exactly how you can see all of this with What's Up Gold.
Thank you, Mark. I am going to share my screen. Let me know if you're able to see it.
I'm seeing it.
Okay, very good. Okay, so this is the, for those not familiar, this is the What's Up Gold web interface. Today we're looking specifically at the virtual monitoring aspect of What's Up Gold. We currently support Hyper-V and VMware environments for virtual monitoring. As with everything else, it will start with a discovery where we will provide it with an IP address. Typically, it could be the vCenter IP address or a host IP. What's Up Gold does what we call discovery by association. So if it discovers a host, it will go ahead and discover all the VMs that are powered on and online at the time of discovery, and then we can enable monitoring. So what you're looking at here is a simple group or map of devices that includes, you'll see things like the data center here, you'll see the vCenter, and all of the hosts that it's connected to. So when What's Up Gold does a discovery over your virtual environment, it will find all of the hosts, it will find the VMs, and then you decide, okay, which of these do I want to monitor? And so anything you monitor in What's Up Gold then is now open for probing and querying for performance and that sort of thing. As Mark mentioned earlier, some of the data that you will get from these monitors or the virtual monitoring What's Up Gold is performance data. So you'll be able to track things like disk utilization, memory utilization, CPU, and so on. Depending on what all is available or enabled, you'll have these by default set up in What's Up Gold. The discovery, as you see here, have all enabled here. So all of this data that we see here, like disk utilization and memory and so forth, we're grabbing these in this specific example through the VMware API. So What's Up Gold connects to your virtual infrastructure, and it's able to pull this information in through reporting. We could show you what CPU is like, what disk utilization is like. And since these are numbers that we could plot to a graph, we could set them up to where you could be alerted if it exceeds certain thresholds. So if, for example, disk utilization exceeds 80%, we can set up an alert for that. So beyond this, where we'll go is the Analyze section. You will find a virtual monitoring dashboard. And in the virtual monitoring dashboard, again, it will give you an option to choose all virtual devices, or you could go to specific hosts and see all of the associated VMs that are powered on that are being monitored by What's Up Gold. And this is a quick glance into my virtual environment here, where I can see how much CPU is being used, how much memory, disk activity, as well as interface utilization. All of these are items Mark mentioned earlier. So in this single view, I can take a look and get an instant view of anything that is using the most or doing the most, really, in terms of performance data. So again, this is data that What's Up Gold will pull from the virtual API, in this case VMware, and it will do the same for Hyper-V systems as well. So we're collecting this data, and What's Up Gold is reporting on the data. Any CPU utilization information that you see here, you can find them in the what we call the standard or the default performance reports, like CPU utilization, top 10 reports, and so on. We could go into my virtual interface, like a virtual group, like I'm showing here, and see data specific to these devices. I can run a top 10 report, and on all my virtual devices, I can see again in a nice single view here how they're performing in terms of memory utilization, CPU, disk, and so on, or any other custom monitor I apply to these devices. And there's also something called Predictive Trending that you can use for these reports, where we could track how they perform over time based upon the data we've collected. Is there a memory leak of some sort that's trending upwards? A report like this will be able to show you how the data that we've collected over time is trending. So that's that's the reporting aspect of it. There is another option called the VMware Events Report. where in this case, what we're looking at are specific events that might have triggered. Let me see if there's anything from this host. Actually, I'm going to jump over to another view here. So on this VMware event, anything that happened, migration, any errors or any of that, those are also pieces of information that WhatSUPGo will pull from the virtual environment. When we go into settings, actions and alerts, and the alert center libraries, there's an entry here specific to both Hyper-V and VMware. And when you select them, you will see that you can set up alerting for any high availability error events or security related events or migration events. When you select other events, it will give you a list of errors that you could set up alerting for. So maybe there was a migration error, VM failover fail. A number of these are specific errors that are specific to, in this case, VMware. And so whenever any of these errors or events get triggered, WhatSUPGo can alert you about any of these. Finally, one of the other options that WhatSUPGo comes with in terms of monitoring your virtual infrastructure to be more proactive or dealing with the specific issues is to work directly with the virtual device. So if we were to, let me see, I'm going to jump back to my other system here. So if you go into the actions and alerts section, you will find part of the many options of actions that can be taken when WhatSUPGo detects some anomaly on your network. Is you have the option for Vmware Action. And what this allows you to do is point at a monitored host with the right credential. It will give you an option to load the VMs associated with that host. And from here, and you can pick a number of VMs, from here there are a couple things or several things that you could do as an action, right? So maybe it's something that you're monitoring, and as a result, obviously you want to be emailed, you want to be called, or whatever the other actions are. But in addition to that, we can do some type of self-healing type action using one of these operations. Maybe it's such an event that it requires a power off of a VM, or maybe suspension or restart. So any of these options you have available to you in your toolbox there when monitoring the virtual infrastructure using WhatSUPGo. So with that, I will turn this back over to Mark, and we can open it up for any other questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was fantastic. And I know we've got some limited time here, but I've seen some great questions come in. And I'm going to address a couple of them right off the bat. One of the main questions has been, how is this licensed? And how do we pay for this? Is this agent required? Do you require an agent? WhatSUPGo is licensed per device. Virtual monitoring is available as either an add-on capability for our premium edition, or it's included as part of our Total Plus edition, which is the Cadillac version that has all the bits and pieces. Every single individual virtual machine is going to be treated as a single device. So, that's how, and that's generally how we're licensed. The system is agentless. We are polling individual devices to get the information we need, and working with APIs for VMware and Hyper-V in general. I had a question too about what kind of organizations we service. We cover every single vertical, and anything from small networks with a dozen or a couple of dozen devices, right up to several thousand. Our sweet spot's really kind of a couple thousand or 2,000 devices with really any IT team of less than about 10 or 15 people. That's where we tend to work best, usually in the mid-market there. And that's going to vary depending on the network, depending on the requirements, depending on the actual goals. But pretty much, unless you're a Google or a Microsoft, we've got a solution that's going to meet your needs. So in terms of training videos, I've got some questions about that. We do have some online training. I have a question here about setup. And you can find any of our online training or publicly available information either on our website at whatsupgold.com. You'll find links there as well to both paid training and to our community where there's a lot of free information, including a full knowledge base. If you'd like to know more, you're also, of course, more than welcome to simply get in touch with us. There's a big Contact Us link on every single page. We'd be more than happy to discuss exactly what your concerns are and what you're trying to do and how we could help out. There's a question. Oh, yeah, questions about reports. I mentioned dashboards, and I know that Mark showed a number of them. Anything that you see as a dashboard can pretty much be exported as a report. So either as a PDF or as an email or a comma separated value file, and those can be done manually or they can be automated. So the reporting structure is very robust. If we can, show you if we can report on it, we can make a report of it. Sorry, going through some of these. A lot of questions have come in. This is great. I think the only other questions I noticed that I want to kind of highlight are someone asked specifically how it can help reduce MTTR, or mean time to resolution. And that's kind of the entire raison d'etre or purpose of WhatsUp Gold. It's a network monitoring and diagnostic tool. So its entire point is to allow you to find and fix problems quickly, and being able to look at things from multiple angles and see everything in context is really what makes a difference when it comes to reducing MTTR. If you're jumping from VMware into a separate infrastructure monitoring system, or then into a separate, say, storage monitoring system, every time you do that, you're making things more difficult. It's going to cost you more time. There's studies, the analysts have done studies on this. The more tools you have, the more difficult it is to get things done efficiently and to get things done quickly. WhatsUp Gold lets you see everything in context and makes it very easy to figure out what the problem is and track it down. And I'm sorry, I think you guys, our team here might have a better view of what's coming in, because they're frankly coming in faster than I can respond to some of them. I have one question here about encryption capabilities. WhatsUp Gold can be run in a FIPS encryption mode on Windows servers that are FIPS encrypted, but overall sort of access control, the data being sent back and forth, I do not believe is encrypted, although Mark Singh might have a better take on that one.
One of the questions I saw, Mark, I wanted to ask you here that came in, and you may have answered this, is what virtualization hypervisors are supported to be monitored by WhatsUp?
And that's going to be Hyper-V and VMware. We know there are others out there. Those are the most popular ones that our customers are looking for.
Absolutely. And what about if folks want to get started, if they want to just try this out for themselves? Is there some sort of trial or evaluation they can do?
Absolutely. If you go to whatsupgold.com, you will see a great big red free trial button on every single page. That will get you our full Cadillac version Total Plus edition in a free version. It's good for 14 days and it gives you every single bell and whistle. And with effectively a unrestricted number, I shouldn't say unrestricted, I think it's 20,000 device restriction. So it's something you can play with, something you can try out. We also have at whatsupgold.com, if you don't want to download and install anything, a live virtual online demo that you can walk through, click on things, see how they look, see how it works, and you can take a look at that virtual overlay yourself and see how it shows up. So there's a lot of different ways to try it out and take a look at it and see what it can do for you.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like a great opportunity for folks to try it out for themselves. I know I used WhatsUp Gold for many years. When I was an IT manager, it was a great product. So glad to have you all here on today's EcoCast event. And again, for more information, also, I encourage everyone to check out the handouts tab there. There's a resource there for some additional information as well. Mark, it's been great to have you on the event today. Hey, Corinne, it's great to have you back on.
Hey, I'm super excited to be here. I always love doing these small webcasts. So let's go ahead and hop right in. We're going to be talking about the Office 365 backup checklist, or More appropriately, we're moving over to the naming convention Microsoft 365 checklist. And this is going to go over some of the things that you need to consider when you're looking at a backup software, not specifically just our software itself, but the questions that you should be asking and the flexibility that you should really be demanding from any that we have here is the deployment flexibility. Now, when we say deployment flexibility, it's not just about the different kinds of deployments and ways that you can store your data, but the where. Where can you store your data? We offer, or if you can offer an on-premises deployment, any of the public clouds, being able to be deployed from any of the marketplace, such as Amazon or Azure. And then the flexibility to choose backup as a service. So having an ecosystem of service providers within the software vendor themselves can help you have that flexibility. Maybe you don't have that IT staff in order to meet those compliance reasons. And having the flexibility to choose a service provider that meets all of your needs is crucial when you're looking at your first option for your backup checklist. The next one is, in fact, a little bit more about the infrastructure, and it's the flexibility of the storage. Now, I recommend Microsoft 365 backup solution is an object storage. And that's just because the backup data type for Microsoft 365 is a lot more volatile than it used to be. You're not just looking at email and having your static 10 megabyte limits of data transferring between people, but we're moving into SharePoint and OneDrive, which once you open that up, anyone can open terabytes of data really overnight. So having an object storage type of repository as an option for that backup solution can be really critical, so you don't have to do an immediate on-prem type of expansion of local disk, reconfiguring of RAID, or even worse, having a downtime period because you do not have the availability and the resources to be able to expand that storage to accommodate for the massive influx of data. Now, having additional storage types like an on-premises types of storage, the DAS, the SAN, and of course the SMBs is a crucial in some cases when it comes to compliance, but I even kind of lean more towards advising someone to deploy an on-premises S3 type of storage to have that more flexible infinite capacity storage location and target location. It's kind of beaten out SMB in that sense. I guess that's more of a my opinion, but I'd say object storage is definitely the future, but having the flexibility to choose the type of storage you want is important. Now, to go a little above and beyond just choosing the type of storage is the flexibility to move between your storage types. So you're not locked into just having an on-prem storage solution, but you have the option to move between an object storage and on-prem and own your data. Don't give up control of your data because a large portion of backing up Microsoft 365 data is having that control back. Now, point 3 is about having the ability to do a hybrid approach. A lot of us over the last couple of years did make that choice, that conscious decision to move up to the cloud, especially when we couldn't have everyone in the office, but that's not been the case and it's not true for everyone, and we still see a lot of hybrid infrastructures out there, especially if they have, say, Exchange Online, and then maybe still SharePoint servers on their local site so they can have a little bit more control over that data. But having an application that's not going to create an additional data sprawl, so you can import both your on-premises, your cloud, or no matter how you have your configuration, into a single console and window can help tremendously when it comes to the support for restore in your infrastructure. Point 4 we have here is the backup scope. So often I see backup providers out there, they'll offer, say, your silver, your gold, and maybe a bronze tier for backup, but that's it. And whatever they've decided for those different tiers of the backup, that's what you're kind of stuck with. You don't have a lot of flexibility if you do need to say any C-level executive in the company can have continuous backups for all of their email and OneDrive, but you don't really care so much about the SharePoint side. And then being able to modify those individual applications for those individual users on different SLAs so that you're getting the backup that you need from each of those user groups. And then having the dynamic ability to use your Microsoft 365 groups within your scopes, because a lot of the time we already have our organization scoped out and organized, especially if we've already done something like Teams, because Teams is so much easier to manage when you end up having your Office 365 groups on that background. Now, with the point 5 we have here, I'd like to give a little bit of background because Teams has become this giant data entity way beyond just chats between two people. Teams started off, I want to say back in 2019. It was, okay, so Microsoft owns a Skype for Business. And now they're going to make their own product, Microsoft Teams. Well, all businesses seem to be either Skype for Business or, of course, Slack. Teams slowly started to come in and really in the last couple of years has become the disruptor. And it's not become a disruptor because it's the best chat service out there, though it does have a great integration for person-to-person chat, but it also started to integrate all of the back-end application and APIs for Exchange and SharePoint and OneDrive. And then they've aggregated those into your channels and your personal and private messages between people, where Exchange has become your contacts and your meetings on your calendar. So anything that you see pop up inside of Teams, you're seeing this one front-end interface in order to do all of your back-end jobs and granular items. Then we see here with SharePoint, you're going to see a direct correlation between SharePoint Online with your Teams files and tab location. Your saved OneNotes are also in SharePoint. And anytime you send a attachment directly to someone through Teams, it leverages your personal OneDrive account in order to make that exchange possible, as well as chat files have now been moved over to OneDrive for Business. Well, this has kind of created a data sprawl. Now, the front-end application gives you that easy access, but you don't even realize how many different back-end data entities are connected by this front-end application. And before and in previous versions of Microsoft APIs, we didn't have access to that metadata to connect those front-end data points to those back-end physical data entities. In most recent versions of the API, they've gotten a new flow which allows us to reach that Teams metadata, which allows us to get the team structure, the granular items, and point them back to the back-end data sources. Not all backup vendors at this point are using this newer method to back up Teams. They just back up those back-end data entities. So be aware that there is more that you can expect from Microsoft Teams backups by using the newer APIs to get that metadata from the back-end resources. So it makes your restore processes a ton smoother. And point 6. So having different types of RPO and RTO objectives, we talked a little bit about having an appropriate schedule for your backups. And there's something with Microsoft that most people are not aware of at this point, which is it still has a throttling metric from their server. So if you don't have a software that allows you to get additional processing power by using, say, backup auxiliary accounts within your backup software, you're not going to be able to achieve your recovery point objectives or your recovery speed objectives with parallel processing and properly using the APIs on the back end. Most of the time, anyone approaches me, how do I know what these are, or how do I test these between the vendors? And a lot of the time, it comes down to running a proof of concept in your infrastructure and confirm the software is going to meet your appropriate SLAs for your front-end backup and restore. Next is one of those pain points and one of the big reasons that you do backup in the first place from Microsoft 365, which is actually your recovery options. Not just granular recovery or recovery for full site recovery back to the original locations, but having the ability to download or save, export for compliance reasons, having a self-service portal so you can give the power to your end users to be able to restore their own data. And something that I know is a little special to our software, we have an ability directly from our Restore console to select an item and email it back to an end user. When we email it back to the end user, that means you do not have to download, move over, export, and then email something to an end user in order to meet compliance, which can save a ton of time and resources for restore tickets. So tremendous help to help desk. And the last point we have here is see what e-discovery type scenarios you can achieve with your backup software. Is it just a restore? Does it have an advanced search option so that you can get the exact files that you're looking for? Can you restore from a specific point in time, or can you only do the most recent point in time? There are a lot of compliances out there, and not all are made the same. And they're very, very much industry dependent what you'll need to achieve. So learn what your compliances are and see if your backup software is going to help meet some of those compliances or how you can then achieve those with different configurations. Now, we talked a lot about the backup checklist. We have 8 points there that you should be asking any vendor. Veeam Backup for Microsoft 365 is Veeam's solution to this issue. We back up Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, OneDrive for Business, and Microsoft Teams, as well as on-prem SharePoint and Exchange. We protect the data with any type of SLA that you'd like to add in. We offer backup auxiliary accounts, which give you that additional parallel processing for your backups. And we have an advanced search, which I'm going to go ahead and give a short demo on here in just a moment, so you can see some of the flexibility and options that we have within there. There are tons of great demos, and I actually do a lot of the demos for our website from veeam.com and going to the top of the page there. And we have a video here if this doesn't finish. And it doesn't look like it, but that's fine. We'll go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll have more time to answer questions that way. So we like to point out that it's not just us telling you about our software, but we have lots of people out there that we work with on a daily basis that say, hey, look at our customers. They have had tremendous success stories. And not just in the small business entity, but in the larger enterprise entities out there. And this next section is going to have a bunch of QR codes. If you have a phone, you can go ahead and get those ready, and I'm sure you'll be able to see these slides later as well if you'd like to get to these URLs. Now, the first one is going to be our Conversational Teams ebook. This ebook allows you to be able to have an intelligent conversation with any of the stakeholders that you need to talk about this topic with in your company, why you need Teams backup, the sprawl of data in the back end, and making sure you're able to restore data in a way that your company expects you to be able to restore that data. Then we have the technical guide. So if you've made a decision and you want to get started with the backup process, this is the Microsoft 365 backup guide. It covers all of the applications that we're able to take a look into and all of the ways and reasons that you may need a backup solution in your organization. Last, this is the video I was talking about, where you're able to download a free trial, completely free for 30 days. If you go to the products in the Microsoft Office 365, that product page has a demo that you're able to check out and how the product is used. Once you've accepted the EULA, you get it free for 30 days, and if you decide to continue using the product, you'll either need a license or it'll switch over to our Community Edition. Our Community Edition offers 10 free users for free forever, which means you can use it at any time. And that's what I had here. So I see a bunch of questions coming in here. Let's see if we can get some of these answered.
Yeah, lots of great questions coming in. While we take questions from the audience, I'm going to go ahead and bring up this poll for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about Veeam? And like you said, Corinne, obviously a lot of interest here, lots of great questions coming in. I do want to remind everyone that the link to the free trial that Corinne had there on the slide, I just shared that in the questions tab as well. And then, of course, there's a link in the handouts tab to the Veeam Office 365 Backup for Dummies book. You can download that as well. So, all right, let's go to Q&A now. Corinne, I guess first question I was going to ask you is, what about reporting? There's a question here from Frank. He says they have auditors. They want to know if their data protection and DR is really working. What sort of reporting capabilities are available to help with that sort of information?
So we have a couple different reports built directly into the product with no additional cost. One of them is the user protection report. The user protection report will report on if you're protecting a certain user, and it'll take a side-by-side look at your organization to see if there's anyone that's not being protected within one of your backup jobs themselves. So you can prove that you are making the effort and you have compliance of all of the users that you're supposed to have.
Excellent. I like this comment from Steve. He says, we're a long-time Veeam customer, and we just recently started using Veeam to back up our Office 365 accounts as well, and the process was seamless. Love to hear that. Here's a good question from Deepak, who wants to know, what about built-in Microsoft 365 protection? How is this different from that?
So a lot of Microsoft 365 protection runs with labels and being able to pull that data back for an e-discovery-like process, which is creating an electronic file to hand over for a court case. This isn't really a solution for backup to getting data back to your end users. So there are a lot of gaps in steps that are either additional or just plain not possible for longer term retention, especially with using native tools within Microsoft 365.
Excellent. Thanks for clarifying that. Here's an interesting question from Murtaza. Can the backups be used to migrate content from on-premises Exchange to Microsoft 365?
So it technically can be if it's within the same tenant, but I honestly don't recommend it because there's some IDs that are in the background of the Microsoft environment that when you do the migration from an on-prem to a cloud entity, it gives your IDs or your users two different IDs for an on-prem and a cloud entity. These IDs are important for linking the data so your entire email box doesn't come up as if it was new and reread that day. But if you are doing that migration through the software, I would recommend doing a backup with a solution that is able to handle both IDs in the back end so you have a seamless backup and restore process for that user.
Got it. Okay. Let's see. This question they're asking, does Veeam support SSO integration?
So we do use modern authentication, and anytime we do an authentication through the console, which I would have showed off here, we use the Microsoft Authentication Server, which is going to then use whatever multi-factor that you have configured in your organization through the device's log on from the website.
Excellent.
So,
And then, sorry?
Yes. The short answer is yes.
Okay, great. Let's see, another one of the questions here, they're asking about retention times. What sort of flexibility do you have around that?
So our retention options can go anywhere from a couple of days or actually a day to keeping your data forever. It's going to be completely dependent on whatever compliance policy you have in your organization. And in our new version that's going to be out before the end of this month, we're going to have a backup copy feature, so you can have two different levels of retention, say something that you use more often or more likely to lose in the last 90 days, and then have a even 7-year cycle on a low-cost object storage tiered out.
Very nice. Another question here, can I use Glacier to store my backups?
With the backup copy feature coming in the next version, you will be able to use Glacier.
Very nice. Can Veeam protect hybrid environments?
Yes, Veeam can protect a hybrid deployment actually directly from the same console. Even if it is separate organizations, you can add them into the same console for an easy management and backup and restore.
That's cool. What about the pricing, licensing options around this?
So we run really informed with Microsoft licensing. We price it based off of a user, and it's about $1.60 per user per month. And I know we offer good discounts around the 3- and 5-year marks.
Cool. And what about adoption on this? They're asking how many organizations use this product?
Oh, I don't even have the numbers on that. We've been growing. I think our year-over-year growth rate now is at 35%. Like, we've been almost doubling all the way up until this last year, which we got a 35% year-over-year growth on new users.
Wow. That's
so
incredible.
Fastly growing product. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good numbers.
Absolutely. All right. So if folks want to get started with this, I know you said, I'll bring up that slide right here again. There's a free 30-day trial. That link right there where it says direct link is a clickable link for everyone out there in the audience. If you want to just click on that, that'll open up a new web browser tab or window in your web browser, or use the QR code right there with your mobile device. I think that's a great place for us to wrap up here because we're running out of time in our live Q&A, but there's some more technical questions there for you, Corinne, in the electronic queue. Always a great presentation. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you for having us, David.
And for more information, again, check out the QR code or the link to better protect your Office 365 or Microsoft 365, as it's known now, environment. All right. Thank you to everyone who submitted the excellent questions. I do want to now announce, I forgot to do it earlier, our first Amazon $500 gift card winner. This is going to Amber Sloan of Kentucky. Congratulations, Amber Sloan of Kentucky. All right, and with that, it's now time for our next presentation on today's EcoCast. I'm excited now to welcome Zachary Bly, Solutions Architect at Rubric. Hey, Zachary, it's great to have you on. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Bly. I'm a sales engineer with Rubric, and I appreciate the opportunity to present the Rubric vision and strategy today and how we can enable protection from your on-prem environments all the way up to your multi-cloud workloads. So we're hearing from customers and prospects that there are 3 major imperatives for their data as they proceed through digital transformation. The first is that they want to modernize and automate their data management so they can better scale. Second is that they're on a journey to the cloud. Most organizations have a hybrid or multi-cloud strategy, and they need a data management solution to support and scale with them. And then third thing is that they want to make sure that their data is compliant with regulations, and that most of all, their data needs to be secure from ransomware or other malicious attacks. Well, with Rubric, we have a way to address these concerns. So to start, we designed the Rubric platform with modernization and automation at the core. There are several unique things about our platform. The first is SLA automation. We replaced the thousands of backup jobs with just a few policies that can be applied across all your workloads. We back up not just the data, but also the metadata. So Rubric understands the where, the when, and the how of your data. And that lets Rubric and you get more out of that data. Rubric is designed to recover quickly. So global search across the entire environment, click recover, and mount directly. It's instant recovery and it's intuitive to use. Rubric was designed to be API first. So with the Rubric API, you can deliver new automated services across any topology, a previously impossible feat. And finally, Rubric is secure and has been designed to fit large organization security requirements. But what makes Rubric unique and most secure is that once backup data is written, it can never be changed. So why is this important? Protection against ransomware. With Rubric, you apply the same unified policies across on-premise workloads, which is here on this bottom layer, as well as all your cloud workloads, which is here in the second layer. So Rubric helps your journey to the cloud in three ways. We make it easy to archive to lower cost, long-term storage. We help lift and shift applications into the cloud. And we ensure your cloud applications are in fact protected. Now, since we have a copy of all your data and the associated metadata, we're able to use those backups to get more out of your data through anomalous file system detection and data governance to further make sure you're ready for any malicious attempts to breach your environment. We're also hearing from customers that their legacy data protection systems, some of which were purchased decades ago, are just not prepared for the future. Right? They're complex, and over the years, they've wound up with hundreds, if not thousands, of jobs to maintain. The legacy focused more heavily on backup speed, but ignored recovery. And slow recovery for some can mean no recovery at all. And legacy backup can be expensive. So whether it's maintenance, upgrades, and cost of downtime, multiple points of administration, or those thousands of backup jobs. So one of the reasons behind our success is that data protection hasn't changed much. It's a complex architecture that's made up of different hardware and software components and often requires a lot of personnel time to keep it up and running. Well, we modernize by collapsing this complex architecture through a single software fabric that scales out infinitely to provide data protection both on-prem and in the cloud. We hear from customers that they're not meeting recovery objectives with their legacy solution. That often requires multiple steps to recover. But with Rubric, you can quickly search across the entire environment and then easily pick the restore point that you want. And then you can mount the Rubric backup directly to the host. So whether you're recovering from a corrupt database or a ransomware attack, recovery is what Rubric was built for. Legacy backup has gotten costly. Hardware upgrades, maintenance, personnel costs to maintain, whereas modern backup is less expensive. Rubric customers recover 70 to 90% of their operational or administrative time when they move off their legacy systems. And they save 40 to 50% in total hard costs. So Rubric can protect all these applications and data stores in your environment, from databases, VMs, to network attached storage and physical file sets. Our engineering teams have invested heavily to provide unmatched performance and scalability across these workloads. So here are just a few top-level data points to consider. The ability to instantly restore databases, SQL and Oracle databases with LiveMount. The protection via continuous data protection for virtual machines and native integration with vSphere ecosystem, as well as the ability to restore millions of files in a small amount of time, or directly send NAS data out to archive NAS data out to low-cost cloud storage. So when it comes to protecting things beyond our standard VMs and our standard databases. We're also making efforts to protect container environments, Kubernetes, for example. So, ultimately protecting Kubernetes environments is a challenging endeavor. They're dynamic, and manual CLI or job-centric approaches leads to more complexity. So restores are slow as well, and they're often tedious and limited to the current environment. And then because environments are so distributed, there's a need for visibility into deployments and availability. So in a future release, you'll actually be able to extend the powerful management capabilities of Rubric to your dynamic Kubernetes environments and protect your applications and data. So our policy-centric approach will allow you to streamline protection of applications and data, to automate the protection of the persistent volumes and Kubernetes objects with a single SLA. You can offer fast, flexible, and full application recovery of namespaces, persistent volumes, or specific files, and you can recover to the same location or a new cluster. Lastly, enjoy centralized management and visibility across workloads and locations via Polaris's single interface. So get visual insights on SLA compliance and data availability. And then when it comes to accelerating and de-risking that cloud journey, right? We make it simpler for our customers to adopt that multi-cloud data protection strategy. The typical first step is cutting costs by leveraging cloud for archival and offsite protection of backup data. The next is leveraging the archive data to lift and shift or migrate workloads within their cloud. And once migrated, we then are able to protect the environment by utilizing Polaris without cumbersome infrastructure and complex administration. So the same complexity you found in legacy data center environments, we see IT teams struggling with that and reconstructing that complexity within the cloud. There's no single point of control to see all the data across all the clouds, so whether that's on-prem or one of the cloud providers. They become reliant on this tapestry of multiple tools per service for backup and recovery. And then with multiple tools and often multiple clouds, there's not an easy way to really monitor whether you're in compliance with your data protection objectives. So our approach changes that. Right? Single management console from on-prem to the cloud with a common policy-driven engine to centrally manage your backups, unify that availability and control with everything by an SLA, but also granular file level recovery, not available in those native tools. And then there's flexible recovery options, including per object and per file. Efficient archiving, easy slider-based archive policy, simply point it to the cloud storage that you want, and we'll use smart tiering to tell you what the lowest possible cloud storage is for the time objectives you have. And then there's automated setup, where we automatically discover new cloud environments and automatically apply policies to these new workloads. This allows you to de-risk cloud, keep all your cloud workloads protected, and have cross-cloud recovery mobility. And then beyond cloud-native workloads, we offer SaaS data protection for M365, delivered as a service by Rubric. So Microsoft operates with the shared responsibility model in mind, meaning that they will guarantee your service availability. What they're not going to do is guarantee your data availability. And where there's data loss, it's your responsibility to ensure that data is accessible and recoverable. That's where Rubric comes in. This is about achieving leading simplicity and scalability for your M365 applications, giving you that powerful policy-driven protection for Teams, SharePoint, OneDrive, and Exchange. And with unlimited storage and predictable per-user pricing, you can maintain that Rubric simplicity at cloud scale. And here today, what we support through Rubric SaaS and cloud cluster offerings. So again, whether it's that cloud native protection for AWS, RDS, Azure VMs, GCP VM, all the way up to the M365 and Azure SQL hosted, right? And then VMware Cloud in Google, Azure, and AWS, as well as Oracle across AWS and Azure, and SQL Server. All right, the ability to protect your cloud workloads is there. And then from a high level overview of Rubric CDM and how everything plays together and orchestrates all as a single item. Right, this is what we see. The ability to deploy devices across data centers, protecting those devices, scaling in a web scale, non-disruptive manner, as well as extending that protection to cloud workloads, whether it's through low-cost archival storage or that SaaS and cloud-native protection. And then the ability to utilize the data at hand for data governance, ransomware remediation, DR orchestration, all managed through Polaris and a single SLA policy engine. And then the ability to integrate via API to ServiceNow, vRealize, Ansible. So from a cyber resiliency standpoint, this is where I think Rubric focuses our heart and soul, where we drill down in and really bring our A game. Right. Our approach to cyber resiliency is what we call zero trust data management. Rubric platform assumes that all users, devices, and applications are not trustworthy and may have been compromised. Trust nothing, verify everything. This starts with Rubric's unique native immutability and logical air gap. So this means that your data cannot be accessed or encrypted by ransomware. Then we provide fully scoped anomaly detection to intelligently assess the blast radius of ransomware, determining what data was affected. Along with that intelligence comes sensitive data assessment, which identifies and classifies sensitive data to determine whether it was impacted by an attack. And finally, we provide a number of expert-guided recovery options to get your data and applications back online quickly. So why Rubric, right? We deliver this zero trust data management. We deliver this platform. It's architected with bit resilience to deliver security and resilience at the point of data, so you can rely upon your protected data to initiate a recovery process. And then how we do that, our approach has several unique capabilities. Always available, immutable data. Our own Atlas file system creates a logical air gap of protected data, not accessible or discoverable from the network. We've developed a tight coupling between the software and backup appliance with zero trust open protocols. And of course, two-factor authentication is on by default. So security intelligence, right, to understand the scope of the attack, which bits were affected and which were not, and to analyze whether sensitive or regulated data is impacted and whether certain users are involved. And there's orchestrated recovery, which delivers an automated recovery playbook to get your application the nearest clean data. The playbook includes the groups of affected workloads, sequencing order, the necessary components, and the recovery type. And then where Rubric focuses within the key levels of data protection, what we consider the key levels of data protection, these three pillars: an air gap, immutability, and zero trust, which typically groups taking one part of each, or one part here, one part there. But with Rubric, we focus on a logical air gap, true immutability, and a zero trust architecture of never trust and always verify. So again, zero trust data management, can't really dig in it enough, but just to give you an overview as to what this does look like, our bunker in our box, supplying end-to-end encryption with secure AD user and group logins and role-based access controls, as well as secure local admin logins, and then retention lock to prevent node and cluster resets, and then NTP poisoning and drift. So touching on it a little bit more, and further increase our security portfolio and bolster incident response, we've developed tools to use within our platform to measure anomalous events and pinpoint sensitive data out in the wild. The first of these applications being Radar. Radar uses machine learning to understand behavior patterns of data over time. When there is unusual behavior, such as a security attack, it immediately alerts a user, enabling them to act quickly to minimize overall downtime. By running machine learning algorithms against historical data, Radar establishes a normal baseline for each specific machine and monitors file content change rates to flag any outliers and generate an alert to the Rubric Polaris UI. So for every snapshot, Radar analyzes several file properties, including file change rate, inconsistent content and file type, and entropy change of a file. This custom trained machine learning model is developed uniquely for each customer over time, with no impact to the production environment since all analysis is performed in the cloud using Rubric's Polaris data repository. And now Radar integrates with Palo Alto Cortex SOAR, in addition to ServiceNow incident response products to help the IT ops and SecOps teams seamlessly collaborate when they need to the most. Not only is it important to understand the blast radius of a ransomware attack, but it's also important to identify potential sensitive data, so data breaches. As businesses adopt cloud, they grapple with massive data fragmentation, making it impossible to know where sensitive data resides. At the same time, the increasing risk of data privacy breaches and non-compliance with regulations impose serious financial penalties. Polaris Sonar is a SaaS application that discovers, classifies, and then reports on sensitive data without any impact to production. Sonar helps you identify high-risk user activity to protect your sensitive data. So now you can very quickly scan across your environment to determine exactly where your regulated data is and correlate user access with data deletions, encryptions, or modifications. And you can proactively look through your entire data environment to figure out where your sensitive data is and which users are accessing it. And Rubric is also excited to extend our portfolio of cyber resilience solutions by introducing threat hunting capabilities within the backup platform. Traditionally, threat hunting solutions enable organizations to search production systems for patterns of malicious activity and indicators of compromise. These patterns are often developed by trusted third parties who study the signatures of common ransomware attacks. Well, Rubric is bringing this capability to our backup platform so that organizations will now be able to easily search the backup environment for indicators of compromise without any impact on production systems. As production systems can be modified by attackers, threat hunting directly on production systems can be impacted in the event of an attack. This innovative new capability further arms organizations to reduce their incident response times and strengthen their posture against ransomware attacks with the ability to quickly search backup snapshots for indicators of compromise. Organizations can now more accurately pinpoint a last known clean snapshot to restore to, with the confidence that embedded malware will not reinfect production systems. So with that being said, any questions?
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, Zach. We do have some questions for you. And while we take those questions, I've just brought up a poll for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about Rubric? And lots of great questions are coming in. Zach, you ready to take some of these?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's see. First one I see here, this one's from Jeff. And Jeff is saying, you know, he works at maybe a smaller organization, or some of the little guys that he works with are less tech savvy. And do you have support or consulting or something to help migrate those into this newer technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jeff, great question. And the answer to that is yes. Both support and consulting services. Typically, process is once we kind of get a gauge of the environment a little bit better and we have that conversation with our prospects, our customers, then decided kind of what the best course of action is, whether it is going to be kind of more of a hands-off approach or, Rubric-led approach, or even a Rubric-certified partner approach to integration within the current environment.
Excellent. And then a follow-up question from Jeff, how does integration work with others? He said, I'm assuming other solutions.
Yeah, that's kind of what I got. And Jeff, again, please feel free to follow up with either local or, there'll be contact points after this call, I'm sure. So when it comes to integration across the board, I mean, it's easy enough to integrate with whatever we really need to. When it comes to backing up VMs, we're specifically focused on integrating with those native APIs. So whether it's Vmware, Acropolis, Hyper-V. And then when it comes to backing up NAS shares, as well as physical Windows and Linux boxes, we can back it all up. the integrations are absolutely there. If we need to clarify on that, I would say just bring that question to that follow-up contact that you do have.
Excellent. Frank is asking, what's the typical company size and environment that's ideal for your product? Is Rubric good for kind of all size companies, or is there a sweet spot, or what do you recommend there?
Yeah, Frank, good question. Everybody. So we definitely started out as an enterprise solution, but we knew that ransomware doesn't stick to just a single group of people. And so we've extended our capabilities down to the mid-market and SMB ranges too. I can tell you that the smallest customer that I've worked with has been right at around 2 terabytes. It's just kind of the focus we like to look at is what's important. Is it just standard backups? Okay, that's great, but is security a huge focus? And the ability to keep truly immutable backups, that's our primary piece behind it. We want to make sure that you're getting the security needs that you absolutely have to have.
Excellent. Rakita is asking, is a backup and restore of Active Directory possible with Rubric?
Yes, that is absolutely possible. We can back up and restore Active Directory. And I apologize, too, David. I saw that Frank had another question. The SOC 2, Type 2, so we actually underwent our, I believe we just recently went under our SOC 2 assessment again for this year and passed again.
Nice. Let's see, another good question. Can you explain the firmware upgrade process from Chris?
Yep. So the firmware upgrade process, the way customers can do them themselves if they want. That process is easy enough, but the way we just recommend you do it is reach out to support, get a date set for that upgrade process, and then support will actually run the upgrades for you.
Excellent.
It's just easier, takes a lot off your plate.
Yeah, absolutely. Mohammed wants to know what DR capabilities are available in Rubric.
Absolutely. Mohammed, that's a great question. And it is one that, as of right now, we can absolutely do. So this primarily adheres to VMware, but the roadmap is set for everything we possibly can. But we have a tool called AppFlows, the DR orchestration tool. And all our apps are developed in-house. I know I talked about Radar and Sonar and Threat Hunter. Everything's developed in-house, and so specifically with this AppFlows piece as well, it's a blueprint-based organizer. You set those blueprints, set those parameters, have a secondary site. That way, if you do need to fail over in that sense, it is a simple couple-click failover from primary to DR site utilizing AppFlows. We can do the same within AWS too if you're running VMC within AWS.
Nice. Nice. And then let's see, another question here they want to know, what about agents? Does Rubric use agents to do backups?
So we actually do not use agents with backups. For vSphere, Acropolis, or Hyper-V, we just leverage the API integration that we have with those vendors. That's how we're able to go out and discover all workloads and auto-inventory them right into the what we call CDM UI. And so that's where you get to protecting. The points in time where we do require quote-unquote agent, because it is a very, very lightweight connector. The footprint is less than 10 meg from a data standpoint, or sorry, less than 10 meg from a data standpoint and less than 200 meg from a RAM standpoint. But that's required for physical backups, so physical Linux and Unix and Windows servers. And then if you're going to utilize that full recovery mode for SQL, as well as the that kind of full recovery mode for Oracle, we highly recommend utilizing RBS because that allows us to do those granular backups, but also what gives us our granular restore abilities.
Excellent. All right, you got some great feedback here from Adam. He says that they are a very satisfied Rubric customer. Always great to see that. Zach, I'm afraid that's all the time we have here in our live Q&A, but there's many more questions that are still for you in the electronic queue. Maybe you can get back to some of those folks. Thank you so much for being on the EcoCast today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I appreciate the time.
And for more information on Rubric, check out the link there in the handouts tab. That'll take you over to the Rubric live website, Rubric 101 demo series. a great set of educational resources there available in the Handouts tab. All right, and with that, looks like we got a lot of great responses from the poll. We appreciate your feedback there. It's now time to bring in our next presenter on today's EcoCast. I'm excited to welcome back Mr. W. Curtis Preston, Chief Technical Evangelist at Druva. Hey, Curtis, how you doing?
Doing all right. Ready to roll.
Excellent. Great to have you on. Take it away.
All right. Thanks a lot. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be. I am W. Curtis Preston, as he already said, the Chief Technical Evangelist for Druva. Been here about 4 years. And for those of you unfamiliar with me, I've been in the space for about 30 years. I've written O'Reilly's books on backups, one of which came out back in May. And so when I look at a slide like our, the first slide that we have here that shows the typical complexity of a typical data protection system, it brings memories back, right? I have helped design and maintain many of these systems, and I've watched over the last 20 years, I've watched many companies try to address the challenges of a typical backup and recovery system, right? The problems are very well known, right? So you get the unpredictable data growth. There's always a new workload that you need to protect. And more importantly, there is this issue of complex vendor management. So there's typically multiple solutions. There's a combination of hardware and software. You got some hardware vendors, you got some software vendors. Typically you have multiple hardware vendors. Then you're also looking at possibly tape vendors, deduplication, disk array vendors, and then also possibly other vendors such as cloud vendors and service vendors such as Iron Mountain. And so a typical backup system has anywhere from 3 to like 10 of those vendors that you're dealing with. And the other thing is that you typically have a lack of a data governance and a ransomware recovery strategy. The many backup products are now saying that they have a ransomware recovery process, when at least some of them, what they're basically saying is because they have a backup, they can help you recover from ransomware. It's definitely more than that required. The other thing, when I look at this drawing, you look at all of the different pieces that go into a data protection system. One of the things that I think you can see in this drawing is that when I started the industry back in 1993, the data center was the center of data, but now that no longer is the case, right? You've got cloud workloads, you've got SaaS workloads, you've got multiple hypervisors. You might have VMware, Hyper-V, Acropolis hypervisor. You've got all of these different types of things. You might be using a physical hypervisor, like a regular VMware environment. You might be using VMware in the cloud. And so when I look at that, and I look at the typical data protection system that I grew up on, and including some of the newer data protection systems, what I see is most of the data protection systems that you see are based on the old idea that the data was in the data center. And so you continue to see newer products that are built around, sending everything to the data center, when in reality, many companies are, they're definitely migrating to the cloud. Other companies, the majority of their data is in the cloud. And if you're not there today, you might be there soon. And so the question that when I look at this typical data protection system, I just ask myself, is there a different way to do it? So we think that you should protect the data where it lives, all right? So there's a combination of things. There's hybrid workloads, cloud workloads, there are endpoints. We think that a data protection system should scale on demand, that there shouldn't be a dependency on a certain type of infrastructure. that another challenge that you have with a typical data protection system is that you pick your favorite backup product or appliance. You need to decide what you need for the next 3 years and buy that today because you're buying an appliance. Whether you're buying an appliance with the backup or you're buying an appliance and installing the backup, you are deciding what you need to buy for the next 3 years and then putting that appliance in there. And at best, you're going to guess wrong, right? So at best, you guessed high and you bought too much. And what that means is that you wasted your money. You spent a bunch of money on hardware and software that went unused for the majority of the time, and perhaps the entire time that you owned it. Instead of doing that, what about a consumption model where you only pay for the data that you're backing up as you're backing it up? The other thing is, a system that protects modern workloads using the cloud, right? If you're backing up cloud workloads, it just makes sense to me to be using the cloud to back up those workloads, right? And by the way, you can also back up data center workloads and endpoint workloads with the same technology. You do need, as some of our competitors do have encryption, some do not, but you must, I think, in a modern world, when everything is everywhere, everything needs to be encrypted before it's sent and encrypted again when it's stored. And then by doing all of this, you get better business continuity and a resilient strategy by protecting the data where it lives, which at this point is starting to become the cloud. You get a reduced TCO. You also get better SLAs and risks against things like data theft and non-compliance. So I'd like to talk about the Druva Cloud platform. So if you're unfamiliar with it, we are the industry's first and leading SaaS provider of data protection. So our infrastructure is powered by AWS, which means our infrastructure, that is where our infrastructure runs. And so I'd just like you to think for a moment about doing something different with data protection. Instead of buying and purchasing a system that you own in the data center, when in reality much of your data isn't there anymore or soon will not be, consider using a service where all of that happens in the cloud, where you don't have to manage any of the infrastructure. You simply pay for what you need as you need it. It comes with the same type of functionality, starting with data protection and backup and recovery, disaster recovery, fully automated disaster recovery that's ready within 15 to 20 minutes of when you declare a disaster. I'll talk more about that later. It comes with e-discovery and compliance tools that you can dictate what your, for example, if you're protecting something like 365 or an endpoint, you can specify, look for patterns like this, and if you see, I'll just give one example for it. This is primarily an American example, but a social security number. You can create a regular expression that identifies social security numbers. You can put that in our tool, and we can tell you, Steve is putting social security numbers in his spreadsheet, and we just started backing them up. You can then be notified. You can rectify that situation so that you're not furthering the problem by backing up and storing many backups with sensitive data in them. And then also ransomware recovery. You need a service that understands what ransomware really is. And yes, it does start with a solid disaster recovery system, which, as I already mentioned, we can do in 15 to 20 minutes for your entire environment. But it also needs to understand that ransomware is sometimes, and quite often, it has a very long dwell time. And what do I mean by that? So most ransomware recovery solutions are really only able to recover you to a single point in time because, let's face it, that's the way backup and recovery has always worked. The question is, how do you handle when you have a ransomware attack that has a dwell time of, a month. And by the way, the mean dwell time of ransomware products is roughly a month at this point. The average time is actually much higher. And during that time, it's encrypting data without your knowledge. And so it's encrypting data slowly. One of the techniques that some of the ransomware products use is they encrypt older files that aren't being looked at. And they encrypt older files, and then suddenly they encrypt newer files until you kind of have a collision where they've encrypted data that someone has noticed, and then they go crazy and they start encrypting everything. And that's when you find out you have a ransomware attack. But unfortunately, you've been backing up various versions, many of which were encrypted. How do you recover the files that have changed over the last few weeks? Our solution knows how to do that. We're able to recover the last known good version of every file in a single process. You show us the type of ransomware you have, you give us the signature of the ransomware product, we can identify and also make sure that when we're recovering, we're not restoring basically reinstalling the ransomware. So we make sure we don't do that. But we also let you know when that infection first happened, and you say, well, let's start from the day before that and recover up to the most recent day and restore the most recent version, unencrypted or unimpacted version of every file. And we can do that in a single process. And then also you can do long-term data retention for a number of things and do all of those things, things like e-discovery against that long-term function. Now, I list a bunch of the workloads down there below. We talked about VMware, Hyper-V, Acropolis Hypervisor is coming very soon. Kubernetes, SQL Server, Oracle, there's a bunch of them there. We also do 365, Salesforce, G Suite. We also protect AWS natively. We do both, not just VMs, but many different workloads within AWS. And we also do fully automated disaster recovery of AWS workloads. And then, unlike most of our competitors, we also protect endpoints. And we do that, all of this with, I want to mention that we use, I think we're one or two companies that do source-side deduplication. What that means is that we start the deduplication process at the very beginning of the backup process, which means that we can scale up or down as much as we need. This is why we can back up a laptop. This is why we can back up 365 or VMware, and also VMware Cloud on AWS, because we start that deduplication process at the very beginning of the process. It reduces the amount of bandwidth we need, and it reduces the amount of storage that we need to use on your behalf in the cloud. And by the way, that's what we charge you for, is once we do global source-side deduplication across your entire account, which uses roughly half or less the amount of storage that our competitors use. Once we do that, that deduplicated result is what we charge you for each month. You pay no more and no less. You never pay for something that you don't use. So this idea of buying a backup system that goes mostly unused for 3 years is not something that works for us. So what you do is you pay for typically a year's worth of service in advance, and then we debit against that account. And then at the end of the year, we either guessed high or we guessed low. If we guessed high, you've got credits that roll into the next year. If we guess low, then you just renew early. But the key here is that you're never paying for something that you're not using. It's a simplified, unified experience with a single console. Imagine getting all of the cutting-edge functionality of one of the best backup products in the industry without having to worry about any of the infrastructure. You don't have to worry about creating it, managing it, securing that. You can rest easy knowing that the best cybersecurity practices are being done on your behalf. Easy to get started within about 15 minutes. And this is a beautiful thing. The beauty of SaaS, you're already experienced this for things like Microsoft 365 or Salesforce. One of the things that you might not really think about that world is that you always get the latest and greatest all the time. When you talk about, a typical on-prem appliance or a backup software, one of the things you have to worry about is upgrades. I've been that backup administrator. There is nothing more terrifying than upgrading your backup server. It is the last line of defense. You don't want to have to upgrade it. Well, with ours, it's just automatically upgraded for you on your behalf. You've always got the latest, greatest version. You don't have to arrange anything. It just happens on your behalf, in the cloud. Basically, we upgrade the platform, and then all of the customers get that. And we use an agile development process, so we're constantly updating the platform throughout the year. So I alluded to this earlier. I just wanted to mention this idea of secure cloud DR. I think that the only way to do DR today, number one, for most people, is to use the cloud. And I think that the only way to have a truly successful disaster recovery or a ransomware recovery is to have done the recovery before you actually needed it. Back in the day, there was no way you could afford that. But today in the cloud, that is possible, because all you're paying for is a backup copy of the data that's standing by ready for you to go. You create an Amazon VPC, we restore you, and you basically specify which workloads need to be protected, which workloads need to go to be done disaster recovery for. And we pre-restore those on your behalf based on your specifications. And then it's ready to go for you, so that when you declare a disaster, you literally press one button, and then we basically bring that, automatically bring that entire environment live for you in a few minutes, somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes for a typical environment, but it's regardless of the size, because the restore has already been done. All we've got to do is turn on all of the VMs that you've specified to turn on in the order that you specified them. The runbook is all the decisions have been made in advance. You simply click failover. And then, by the way, a lot of companies talk about failover. They don't talk about failback. We also have one-click failback. The service comes with unlimited testing. We do not charge you for tests or declaring a disaster. By the way, one other thing, because we're running in the cloud, some people worry about egress charges. That is not your concern. You pay us, again, one fee per month. It's based on the size of the data that we're backing up for you after all of the deduplication. You don't have to worry about extra costs on top of that when you go to do a restore. Just a quick slide on the University of Manchester that's using us to back up VMware Cloud on AWS, and they reduce costs by up to 50%. If you're not familiar with us, we do over 2 billion backups a year. We've got, actually, I should have updated the slide. We just got to 60 of the Fortune 500 customers, thousands of customers. We're in 16 regions in the world. We allow you to maintain your data provenancy requirements, certified score of NPS of 88, and over 200 petabytes of data under management. And then I'll just sort of finish here. The Gartner has recognized us as a visionary and in the enterprise backup and recovery software solutions. For a long time, this category has been entirely products that are appliances and backup software products. But we are now as a service. What they really liked was the pay-as-you-go pricing model. They really liked the fact that we do backup and DR for distributed environments. They liked about how distributed we were, and that we support a number of other data management use cases. I'll just speak again briefly about the ransomware recovery. Ransomware recovery is much more than disaster recovery, and it's much more than just saying that you have a ransomware recovery solution. It's about automated monitoring for symptoms of a ransomware attack. We are now on a pretty regular basis, we are noticing ransomware attacks that have happened at our customers, are notifying our customers on their behalf, and then helping them through the ransomware recovery process. It's becoming, unfortunately, a pretty regular part of doing business. So while some companies talk about ransomware recovery, we're doing it on a day-to-day basis. So with that, I'll say thank you, and you can go to druva.com/free-trial to get a free trial, and I'll hand things back over.
Great presentation, Curtis. We do appreciate that. While we take questions from the audience, I'm just going to bring up this poll for everyone out there. We want to get your feedback on the poll here. This says, what additional information would you like about Druva? So let's see. First question here for you, Curtis. I see that came in. They're asking, can I meet my RPO and RTOs with the cloud backup?
So it's surprisingly easy to do that, right? So first off, the answer is yes. Well, it will be. It depends, right? If you tell me you've got 50 exabytes of data in a T1 line, there's going to be a problem, right? But from a recovery perspective, you just need to plan for that recovery. So we can do regardless of the size of your environment, we can do that automated DR system that I mentioned within 15 to 20 minutes. The RPO that we can support is 1 hour. That's with our hybrid workloads. That's how frequently that we can currently back those up. So we can support an RPO of 1 hour. And we find that meets the needs of the vast majority of customers. So with an RTO of 15 to 20 minutes and an RPO of 1 hour, that's pretty good. If you don't want to use the automated DR, the best that we have is we do offer a no extra cost product called Cloud Cache that you can load on an appliance of your choice that would allow you to create a local copy of the data so that you can use for fast restore purposes. But I just want to say this, we get into bake-offs all the time with the traditional data protection products, and people are constantly surprised at how we beat them from a recovery speed process. And I think the reason is that many people quite often underpower their backup system because it's an expensive process. One of the beautiful things about being in the cloud is that we can essentially darken the sky with with rain of the restore, right? So because of the way we store data in S3, lots of little pieces, we're not reading one stream of data, which is the way most backup systems work. We're downloading essentially thousands, millions of little pieces of your data at the same time. What I can tell you is that we will fill the pipe. Whatever the pipe that you have is, we will fill that pipe. And that's why quite often we end up actually restoring faster than some of our on-prem competitors.
Very interesting. Yeah, something I didn't think about. So great point, Curtis. See another question here. They want to know, what about an agent? Does Druva require an agent to protect VMs?
So it's very similar to most modern backup systems. We do not require an agent to protect VMs, either VMware, Hyper-V, or Acropolis. We do require a VM or an agent to protect physical hosts such as Windows or Linux hosts in your environment. And of course, we would use an agent to protect your laptop if you wanted to do that. We do not need an agent to protect 365, Salesforce, or G Suite.
Nice. Nice. And then what about when it comes to VM recovery? What are the options there?
Many options, right? So basically, you can recover from anywhere to anywhere. So do you want to recover back to the same VMware server? Do you want to recover to an alternate VMware server? Do you want to recover to a VMware server in another location? Do you want to recover to a VMware Cloud on AWS or a similar environment? Or is it a VMware Cloud on AWS backup that you want to recover to an on-prem environment? It's basically anywhere to anywhere, including doing DR of those VMs to the cloud, running them in AWS. So it's pretty much anywhere to anywhere.
Nice. Nice flexibility. And what about licensing? What's the model there for VM data protection?
So it's really simple. It's and as I mentioned earlier, we don't care how many VMs you have. We don't care how many VM servers you have. The question is, how much does that data deduplicate down to, and how much do we end up storing on your behalf? So all of your backups are all globally deduplicated against each other, and this is without limits. All of the competing products that I'm aware of, they all have some limit where they can't deduplicate together, or they're limited to an appliance or they're limited to a job. We compare all backups to all other backups. And by doing that, we reduce, like I said, we use roughly half the amount of storage that our competitors use to store the same backups. And then that amount is what we charge you for, right? Some products charge you for the front-end terabytes, some charge you for the back-end terabytes, some charge you for both. We charge you for only the back-end terabytes deduplicated after all of the global deduplication.
Excellent. I like that. I like that model. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up our Q&A session here. There's a number of more technical questions there still for you, Curtis, in the electronic queue. Maybe you can get back to some of those folks. But I just brought up the slide for everyone out there that has the links you can mouse over and click on to download the free trial of Druva. Try it out for yourself. Check out the TCO calculator, or just visit druva.com for more information. Curtis, it's always great having you on. Thanks so much.
Thanks again.
All right. I appreciate everyone checking out the slide there. There's the link to the trial. I'll just leave that up. And I believe we have another prize announcement now, another Amazon $500 gift card to give away. Scott, you want to make that announcement for us?
Absolutely. Yep. Thanks, David. Yes, so now it is time for our second prize drawing, and the winner of this $500 Amazon gift card is Neil Anderson from Massachusetts. So congratulations to Neil. We'll be in touch about claiming your prize. And now it's time for our next presentation in the Virtual Environment EcoCast, and our next session comes from Rapid7. And presenting for Rapid7 is Dane Grace, Senior Product Manager. Dane, welcome to the EcoCast.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, take it away.
Sure thing. So for my session, we're going to be digging into sort of this model that I developed, partially to make this entire space make sense to me, but something in customer calls has been really powerful, especially when I'm in enablement conversations, trying to help organizations secure and manage risk in their container environments. There's a couple pieces to this. First off, I think we've seen a grand amount of acceleration, not only in cloud adoption from organizations that are previously hesitant, but moreover in container adoptions, given the opportunities it gives you with flexibility, portability, and even possibly some cost savings by not running applications persistently. But the problem with this is that you start introducing layers of technologies in order to run containers, and so we suffer in the space from a real tool sprawl situation, as well as the fact that organizations have to be aware of the tools that they're implementing, as well as secure them. So I created this model to help sort of map these out to make sure that we can have a clear view as to what we need to address and where in the context of containers. But before we get started, I really like to do this really quick introduction to at least terminology, so that as I'm speaking, we're referring to the same thing at the same time. So when we talk about containers and why we containerize our applications, we can go to Docker because they're the juggernaut in the space. And really all a container is that it's a standalone, self-contained, it packages all of the code and dependencies and things needed to run that application. Previously, in order to run, say, a web app, you would have to stand up some sort of server software, be it Linux or Windows Server, some sort of, say, web server such as Apache, IIS, Nginx, something like that. And then you possibly a database server, and then you installed all your application code on top of that, including all the dependencies for the application code. That worked, it was great, but with that monolith, in order to, say, onboard a new developer or stand up a new instance of that environment, you had to stand up all of that stuff. With containers, you can really just package the things you need to run your application, and then Docker or Kubernetes or whatever container host you're using, AWS, Elastic Container Service, etc., will just run it. It will run the same in the cloud as it would on a developer's machine when they're working on it, or in a staging environment. So that really gets to the portability. is that it isolates software from its environment and shows that you can run this thing uniformly despite the differences between different instances, be it a dev environment, staging environment, production environment. Moreover, what this really gives you is sort of that the lack of dependencies, right? You know your dependencies are within your app code or within your container, and so you're not worried about deploying something and missing some vital piece of software. You can run containers on standalone hosts. Again, Docker is a very popular host, as well as Elastic Container Service, Azure Container Service, Google Container Service. But there's also this concept of orchestration, and the juggernaut in this space is Kubernetes. And so we have some definitions up on the screen, but I prefer to illustrate it in sort of my quick elevator pitch of Kubernetes. It's a little anecdote that I've put together. So let's say I own an online store and I sell t-shirts, for example. And I run this on a lone container running on a Docker host in the cloud. And I generally putter along at 10 to 100 visitors a week. And my one container that runs this entire app does great. But the week before Black Friday, I get an Instagram influencer with 1 million+ followers mentions that they love my t-shirts and Black Friday's coming and I'm having a sale. As Black Friday comes up, my traffic goes from 10 to 100 users per day or per week to 1 million+. And I only have one container running this thing. At this point, I have a couple of options. I can sit there and manually spin up more instances of my application running on the container, put it behind a load balancer, and hope I meet the demand, or I can let my website crash. So let's say I have, for whatever reason, deep pockets, and I decide to stand up 100+ more instances of that container to meet the demand, to keep processing the orders. And Black Friday happens, it holds through. Saturday, it holds through. Sunday, I go through Cyber Monday. I kind of forget about it. The following Thursday, I look and I say, oh, dang, my traffic has dropped back down to normal levels, but I am running persistently all of these containers to meet a demand that I'm not that I don't currently need. So I go in and I manually disinstantiate all of these containers to bring it down, A, for cost reasons, and B, I just don't need that much running. I disinstantiate those to scale down to the demand that I need. Now, in an alternate Marvel universe, I'm running my application on Kubernetes, and the same thing happens. But this time, when my traffic spikes, Kubernetes behind the load balancers notices this, and the computer automatically begins spinning up additional instances of the containers to meet the scale. Spins them up. But on Friday night, when my traffic drops off because everyone's going to bed, Kubernetes automatically disinstantiates those containers. So not just spending compute power to meet a demand that doesn't exist. When Saturday, Sunday, and Monday pass up and arrive, and my demand increases again, Kubernetes does the same thing, spins them up, and at night when the demand decreases, it spins them down. And so this is an example of one of the advantages of Kubernetes is, in high demand applications or in variable demand environments, it allows you to spin up and spin down the containers to meet the demand according to the need that you have in an automated fashion. So some additional terms. There's a lot of nomenclature collision here, so I like to make sure that we're clear in this. Uppercase C container refers to the technology as a whole, containers, containerization, etc. The container image is just the container at rest. It's bits on a disk, but it is the image from which a live container, and in this case, lowercase c, would be instantiated. An instantiated container image, again, is a lowercase c container, and so I'll try to say lowercase c container when I'm referring to this stuff in the future. The container host is the thing that a container is being run on, be it a Docker host, Elastic Container Service, Azure Container Service, or Kubernetes host, or hosted Kubernetes hosts such as Elastic Kubernetes Service, etc. And container orchestration refers to something like Kubernetes, where it's automatically orchestrating your containers. Docker Swarm would be another example. So in digital terms, container registry. Container registry is basically a service that hosts container repositories. Container repositories is a collection of container images or other artifacts in the registry that have the same name but different tags. So you store your container images in a repository, and a repository is hosted on a container registry. So your organization wants to run containers. What do we have to look at? The great news with that is you have a lot of options. And the bad news is that you have a lot of options and you need to secure them all. And oftentimes these options are layered on top of each other so that not only do you have to secure the container image, but you have to secure the container host. You have to make sure your registries and repositories are configured in such a way that they're not publicly accessible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to summarize, when we're looking at containers, we have applications that run on container orchestration solutions, that run on infrastructure solutions secured by security solutions. And that's a lot. So we really need a mental model or a visual model to organize this stuff so that we can make sure that we are addressing all of the areas of concern as it relates to containers. So starting with, if we're looking at this as an X and Y axis, I like to think of this as having layers of technologies that we stack on top of each other in order to run a containerized application. So at the bottom, the undermost layer, and this isn't always necessary, especially in the context of the cloud, you have infrastructure. So these are Windows servers, Linux servers. This could be a VM running in EC2, though that's not necessarily the best way to run a container. Or it could be, in a data center running a Docker host. So you have that first layer where there are vulnerabilities present on the infrastructure layer, and that represents attack surface. Moving a layer up, you have the container host or the orchestration host. And these are things like Docker, Elastic Container Service, Google Container Service, Azure Container Service, Kubernetes or hosted version of Kubernetes. And all of these things can have misconfigurations or you may need patches in order to secure those. So that's just another layer of attack surface that you need to consider. And then finally, on top of it, you have the workload, which is the container image and the lowercase c container that's running on the container orchestration, the container host or the container orchestration that it could be running on the infrastructure layer. And within those container images, you, of course, have software packages, and those represent the ability to have vulnerabilities, either in application code or in the container configuration itself, that represent attack surface. So, at worst, we have 3 layers of attack surface. In a cloud context, we have at least 2 layers of attack surface. But to stack onto that, we have a temporal element to it. So this would be the y-axis. Starting from left to right, you have at rest. So this is when we're looking at container images that are contained on container registries, which are on that are stored within container repositories. And so with the container image, and this is where we talk about shift left, is we want to remediate vulnerabilities in container images before they are instantiated into lowercase c containers at runtime and presented to the world as attack surface. So, for example, let's say one of your containers is running Apache, you want to make sure that you're running a version of the Apache base image that doesn't have the Log4Shell vulnerability, or perhaps a Python vulnerability, or your version of Alpine Linux doesn't have any of the vulnerabilities that can be present there. Then you move right and you have deployment. This is generally the domain of CI/CD. This includes the container host or the infrastructure host itself, making sure that you don't have it misconfigured in such a way that presents attack surface or attack opportunities for attackers. And we'll get into an example of where that's gone wrong. And this is where you want to make sure these sorts of things are built into your CI/CD pipeline. You want tools that integrate with whatever CI/CD tool you're using, such as Jenkins. So for example, Rapid7 with inside Veeam, we have an integration with Jenkins that can not only perform novel vulnerability assessment on images, but we can actually gate deployments of container images to production, depending on certain thresholds that you set. For example, you could say, I never want to see a CVSS 6 or greater in my production environment. With the Jenkins integration, as the container is getting ready to be built and deployed to production, if we see a CVSS 6 vulnerability, the integration can fail the job in Jenkins and return a report so that we understand why this build was failed and what needs to be remediated. And then finally, at runtime, the container image is instantiated into a lowercase c container. And we need to have an understanding of not only what containers are running, so being able to quantify the attack surface, but being able to identify if a lowercase c container did something silly, such as performed a curl or a wget, pulled up new files, which makes your previous vulnerability assessment in the shift left pipeline at deployment and at rest less accurate. Moreover, you want to be able to see if the instantiated container host or container orchestration has misconfigurations that have been deployed that make it vulnerable. And so we're looking not only at stacks of technologies, but also layers of not only layers of technology, but a temporal element of when you're addressing these things and when you're identifying them. So all this sounds great, but how does this all fit together? And so I built this 9-box or 3x3 model of Kubernetes deployments or container deployments, where you on the y-axis you have the layers of technology as they're put together, and then on the x-axis you have the temporal element. So you're looking at what technologies apply at what section of this, right? So the container host, you can have a Kubernetes host or a Docker host or ECS or something like that. Up at the workload, you're looking at, you have container registries and container repositories where you need to address the vulnerabilities in the images. In the CI/CD tool, you're looking for not only vulnerabilities that may have passed through the registry, but looking at the configuration of various pieces of that. And finally, at runtime, you're looking at live containers. In the container host, you're looking at how are they configured at pre-runtime, but then what do they look like at runtime? And finally, infrastructure, making sure that you're using things like Terraform to build with security in mind. And then once in deployment, being able to monitor what the deployment's going to look like and block deployments that with misconfigurations or unpatched software. And then finally, at runtime, get an idea of your attack surface and what vulnerabilities are facing the attackers. So again, just really building this mental model of what it looks like to build this. Now, it's very easy to say, hey, we're going to do the whole shift left thing, and if we're secure pre-deployment, we look good at deployment. And I've already brought up the runtime model of containers being able to pull up new software packages, making your vulnerability assessment less accurate. But more dangerously is you could have rogue deployments. And there's really two use cases here. One, you have a well-meaning developer that wants to push a patch to a container, but they don't want to go through all the hurdles of the security checks or the CI/CD integrations, or they know they made a mistake and they just want to get things done quietly. By integrating with the CI/CD pipeline, you have the ability to catch a container that didn't necessarily get pushed to production, but they just submitted the build job directly, and you have that layer to catch pre-production. But that runtime assessment and visibility piece becomes necessary because you want to see if, hey, we have containers either in our ECS instance, our Kubernetes instance, or on our Docker host that we've never seen either in the deployment pipeline or in the registry or in the repository. Where did this come from? Is this malicious? And you can use that to indicate it's time for an investigation. And the same thing, with deployment and runtime of hosts, right? If you see hosts that you haven't seen through the CI/CD pipeline, or infrastructure you haven't seen in the CI/CD pipeline, or something like that, you start getting visibility into operations that maybe either shadow IT or something like that. That are sort of circumventing security checks. And then the other piece is at runtime, especially with visibility, identifying containers or container images that you haven't seen elsewhere, you could start seeing if a host or an instance has been breached. Is this a container we mean to run? Is it someone within our organization actually deployed? Or has an attacker somehow gotten a hold of this piece of infrastructure and is now deploying malicious payloads into our containerized environments? I have an example of that a bit later, but these are just examples of how you need to have visibility across not only the temporal element, but the vertical element to have a complete view of risk in your environment, as well as the attack surface that you're displaying to your to the world. So digging into some examples of where things went wrong. There have been, so this is like a two-phase problem. All containers generally run an operating system. Alpine Linux, for example, you can actually run Windows Server on it. And there was a 2-year cryptojacking campaign where there was malware being injected into vulnerable container images, and that gave the attackers the ability to hijack that container and install malicious software or be able to leverage that container in order to run things like crypto miners and that sort of thing. There's also been instances where attackers have found VMs or operating systems running vulnerable instances in the cloud and VMs where they were able to take over that VM and again install a crypto miner on there. Now the danger with this, especially in a cloud context, is that most providers charge by compute minutes, and so this represents actual dollars and cents of damages to the organization by the way of their AWS, their Azure, their GCP bill. So again, an example of how understanding pre-deployment what vulnerabilities were present and remediating those before those were available to the world could have saved these organizations a lot of money. This is probably one of the most popular attacks on Kubernetes or orchestration hosts. Attackers will scan the internet for misconfigured kubelets or instances of Kubernetes. Once they find the specific misconfiguration they're looking for, that allows them to leverage a remote code execution attack, get control of that Kubernetes instance, and then they start deploying Monero miners or CryptoCoin miners to that image. And because it's Kubernetes and because it can scale and because they have control of the control plane, they can spin up a number of instances. And as we all know, crypto miners are notoriously process intensive and do some serious dollars and cents damages while making themselves rich. So this is that area where understanding the Kubernetes host layer or the container host layer vulnerabilities could have forgone this by understanding that this misconfiguration is currently being leveraged by attackers and make sure that that misconfiguration never makes it to production so that your organization isn't vulnerable would have been really powerful. And this is just a bitter lesson in that pre-deployment host layer vulnerability story that really strikes to the heart of a lot of organizations. And so there was, this is probably one of the more sinister attacks we've seen. There was an instance where on public container registries. So there are a number of registries in which Docker Hub is probably the greatest example, where organizations will post the canonical version of their containerized application. So Alpine Linux, Apache has their own official Docker image on Docker Hub, Ubuntu, Debian, there's a .NET Core base image. There's a number of very popular software packages that get hosted publicly so that organizations can pull these down and leverage those in their containerized application. I've a note on this later, we'll get to that, but the challenge here is that attackers were able to clone those repositories, basically pull down an image, pull it apart, install their own tooling, and then created another repository within the Docker Hub and other public registries with a very similar name and images with very similar naming so that developers would, unbeknownst to them, pull down the malicious version of what was usually a legitimate image, and that malicious image had malware pre-built into it. And so when they took that base image, built their application on top of it, and deployed it, little did they know that they were deploying malware into their environment. And this gave them the ability, again, to take control over the container, be able to leverage it for things like botnets or things like that, and do particularly malicious actions. A note here, a strategy that I've seen deployed from a number of organizations that I think is probably a great idea for almost everyone to adopt is there are a number of organizations that disallow their developers from randomly pulling images from Docker Hub, and instead they keep an own internal repository of accepted golden container images. In short, if you're going to build an application in our environment, you need to use this version of Alpine Linux or Debian Linux, whatever the operating system is, this specific version of Python or Node NPM or Node or .NET Core, and this specific version of Postgres, MySQL, etc. And you can only use this version from this repository. And if we see versions that fall outside of our golden image path, we won't approve you for deployment. Moreover, as they're bringing these golden images in, they're performing very stringent container image checks and vulnerability assessments on these to make sure that they're using the least vulnerable version of these software packages, so that at least we're starting at a starting line of base level security, and then you can do sort of the code assessment and code review and security review of containers based on an already pretty comfortable and pretty secure place, and then pushing forward from there. And again, this would have circumvented this whole problem simply by understanding that, we're pulling the official MySQL, Python, Alpine, Debian image. We performed a vulnerability assessment. There are no unaccounted for software packages in our golden images, and we're not unknowingly deploying malicious software into our environments. So that's pretty much what I had. Kind of a ramrod through this, but really I just wanted to push the point of making sure that we have a strong mental map of what we're leveraging, when we're leveraging it, and making sure that we are assessing these things for vulnerabilities across the entirety of that temporal field. For this, I'd like to open it up to questions.
All right, Dan. Yeah, no, that was great. And I'm going to go ahead and pop up the poll here. So for any additional information people would like about Rapid7, but I did want to say just that framework was really nice. Just with the definitions and then the layers and the phases, and I really like that 9 box. That was really a nice way of putting it together and giving, as you said, a mental map for it. And one of the questions actually came in from Florin, who's asking, would the presentation be available? And I will say we'll have a recording available like within 24 to 48 hours, so you can go ahead and click through and watch it again. But obviously, I'm not the only person who found that helpful. So other questions we've got here. I'm just wondering, what's the difference in functionality between Insight VM Cloud Configuration Assessment and Rapid7's Insight Cloud Sec?
Yes, that's a great question. And if we're looking at sort of the container host and infrastructure layers of that model, Cloud Configuration Assessment would be looking at the underlying host infrastructure, right, and looking for those misconfigurations and vulnerabilities, whereas our container security, and I really dislike, okay, that'll be a separate rant, and I'll add that later, but our container security feature is specifically looking at the container images and the container workload, right? So our container security section is looking specifically at the workload layer, whereas Cloud Configuration Assessment is interested in the misconfigurations and vulnerabilities in the underlying host architecture, which I hopefully demonstrated, all of that matters, but it's two different sort of layers that we need to address there. Now, if you'll allow me an aside, one of the things I'm trying to champion is this differentiation between cloud security and cloud vulnerability management. So what I mean is cloud vulnerability management is primarily looking at vulnerabilities, and by this I mean CVEs and misconfigurations in cloud infrastructure, specifically containers and container software. Whereas with container security, I'm thinking more of an XDR behavioral analysis of, is a container malicious or is a container vulnerable versus is a container behaving maliciously, right? And there's no shift left really to the XDR, where there is a shift left piece to the VRM piece of it, but both are important, right? One talks to propensity and the other talks to current state, and I think being able to view that holistically, in a hand-in-hand way of this is, even if you have a concept of acceptable risk, right? You also have the understanding with XDR or behavioral analysis of, and this is what would happen if someone were to exploit that acceptable risk. So just a personal thing with me, but I think it's an important differentiation to make, especially given that it's, the number of tools that we have available to us. This is, confusing enough.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting way to think about it. And we are running out of time. I don't know if you can out for a bit. There were a couple of questions in here. They're more technical that you might be able to get to, just by typing in the console afterward. But if somebody wants to get started with Rapid7 or find out more, what do you recommend?
Yeah, go to rapid7.com, or you can email info@rapid7.com, and we'd love to speak with you.
Okay. Well, super. Well, Dane, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate you bringing us up to speed on Rapid7 and giving us such a nice framework for thinking about containers and the security issues around them.
Thank you so much. Love being here. So this is really fun for me.
Awesome. All right. And now it's time for our next presentation in the EcoCast, and our next session comes from Anaconda. Presenting for Anaconda is Michael Grant, Vice President of Services, and Frank Yang, Senior Technical Account Manager. Michael and Frank, welcome.
Hey, thank you very much for having us.
Thanks for being here. Yeah, take it away.
Excellent. So again, I'm Michael Grant. I'm VP of Services, and my colleague Frank Yang has a lot of experience helping our commercial customers tame the data science ecosystem. And so I'm really looking forward to introducing him in a couple of minutes to tell you about some of the solutions we offer in that area. Before we do so, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about our company. The name Anaconda first rose to prominence, if you will, in this market with the release of our original Anaconda distribution, which was a self-contained, easy-to-install set of the 200 most popular packages in the Python data science ecosystem that now has a massive community, over 25 million users of those installers and associated packages. And it's also used in many third-party products and services in an embedded form. And with that, we cultivate that massive community by making strategic investments in the open source ecosystem. But we are also a business, a profit-seeking entity. And the way we do that is we try to provide products and services that help enterprises and large corporations make the proper use of the open source ecosystem in a safe and secure and governable manner. By the numbers in 2021, you can see a lot of magic numbers here that help you understand just what the reach is of our penetration in the marketplace, both academia and in commercial customers. And to put things into perspective, that 4.5 billion package download number puts us right in the middle of the top 10 of YouTube views of all time. And in fact, if you look at our cumulative YouTube views, we blow Baby Shark out of the water. So we're really proud of the influence that we've had in the Python data science ecosystem. But I think it's a reasonable thing to ask, look, we're just talking about open source here. Open source is ostensibly free and readily available, and what are the pitfalls of just relying directly on the source of these open source packages? So to do that, let's go to the gold standard, the Python Package Index, or PyPI for short. And when we put these slides together a few days ago, we were just shy of 360,000 packages in the Python ecosystem. Now, to be fair, not all of them are data science focused, but it's safe to say that if just about any workload that you may even conceive of building in Python is going to be covered or is going to be assisted by some of the packages in this repository. But with that tremendous wealth of value is also a lot of analysis paralysis. I mean, after all, are the packages any good? Are they well maintained? Are they stable? Are they safe? Do their licenses are compatible with your policies? And it's important to point out that we're not just talking about quality here. We are talking about literal issues of safety and vulnerability. You may have seen in the news stories about malicious actors uploading packages to PyPI, often with names that are closely related to names of very well-known and actively used packages in the ecosystem, counting on people accidentally downloading the wrong packages, and in doing so, installing malicious software into their processes and systems. And so this is not just a matter of finding the right package for the job, but genuinely protecting yourself from vulnerability and exploit. Now, I do want to make sure that it's clear that the author-driven publishing approach of the Python package index is a net good. It is absolutely essential. It's what has driven the tremendous amount of innovation in open source data science today. Nevertheless, because publishing is entirely author-driven, there is not a central quality control structure in place, and there's a wide range of code and metadata quality. Furthermore, many of the packages depend on compiled binary code pulled from other libraries. And the way PyPI works that, those binary dependencies are vendored in or pulled into the package themselves. So when you're installing packages of that sort from PyPI, you may not actually even know all of the dependencies and all of the sources of the code that you are using in your virtual environments. Okay, so that sort of tees up the challenge. And so now we can to talk a little bit about what Anaconda has done to help address some of these issues. And for that, we can break it up into two categories. First is the Conda packaging system that we have developed. It's an open source, cross-platform, multi-language packaging system that helps us address some of the key governance, reproducibility, and vulnerability issues that I talked about here. But then also the Anaconda repository. Now, this is our commercially supported, curated subset of PyPI using the Conda packaging system, but with additional value added in a number of ways to help your company make wise choices about the open source you use. And at this point, I'd like to kick it over to Frank so that he can tell us a little bit more about each of these two aspects of our offering. Frank, take it away.
Thank you, Michael. So Conda packaging. At the core of our ecosystem is a package manager named Conda. Conda is both the name of our package format and the tool itself. It runs on all of the major operating systems and hardware platforms. While Python was its original target, it is actually language agnostic and supports packages built in any language, including compiled ones such as C++ and Fortran. This is quite important, since it means we can install the high-performance libraries that enable data science today. Now, Conda itself is a command line tool. For those who prefer a graphical user interface, we have Navigator. This lets you work with Conda environments in a point-and-click fashion. To be clear, a single Conda package on its own is rarely useful. What your application will most likely need is a collection of packages, and this is what we call a Conda environment. So a Conda environment is our unit of virtualization. It contains all of the packages needed to form a single self-contained execution environment. You can have multiple Conda environments to support multiple projects. They are designed to be reproducible, so an application built on your local system can be shared with colleagues or readily deployed to a production server with full confidence that it will perform as designed. In this view of Navigator, we see that packages can be added to environments with a simple click of the mouse. Let's take a look under the hood and see what happens when you install a package. It turns out that installing packages is quite complex. Software is built on top of other software, So what we're looking at here is a graph depicting the dependencies between packages. Even from this very small example, it is clear that it would be impractical and error-prone for a human to do this manually. But with Conda, you simply specify the packages and versions that you know you want, and it will bring in all of the dependencies as needed to function properly. So a key benefit of Conda is that you spend much less time wrestling with packages and dependencies and more time innovating. So Anaconda makes it easy to do data science, but easy to use does not mean limited in functionality. On the contrary, being able to easily mix and match packages from such a vibrant community is what makes the Conda way of data science so versatile and so compelling. Here we see how packages from our ecosystem were integral to producing the first image ever of a black hole. Now, innovation on our use cases are not limited to academia and research. Anaconda is used widely across industries ranging from finance, retail, defense, medical, manufacturing, and many more. Much of the Fortune 500 uses Anaconda. AI, machine learning, and data science are a key part of their competitive strategy. So for these industry leaders, open source is how they're building their secret sauce. So in a nutshell, Conda gives you a tremendously powerful library of packages for data science-oriented tasks. But enterprises are also concerned about security, governance, and compliance. For this reason, we believe that you are best served by using a curated repository. Anaconda provides vetted, best-of-breed packages, and we serve as your single point of contact for enterprise support. We've also engineered several safety measures into our system. Let's take a closer look at a few of these. In support of supply chain security, Anaconda builds packages from source on our secure build network. We sign packages and metadata using state-of-the-art elliptic curve cryptography to ensure that they are transported to you with a compromise-resilient chain of trust. Signature verification is performed right at the point of installation, so you can be assured that the software you install is tamper-free and exactly as built on our secure network. CVE is another name for security vulnerability. In Anaconda's process, we start with raw data from NIST NVD, which is the US government's publicly available database of security vulnerabilities. We refine this data, the goal of which is to ensure accuracy. Because of the complex nature of this task, Anaconda engineers perform human curation. Accuracy is very important because this information is how vulnerable packages are blocked from your system. So why is human curation necessary? On the left side, we have information from NIST NVD. It turns out that their specs are incorrect. In other words, there is simply a data quality issue. On the right-hand side, what Anaconda has done is corrected this information, added commentary to explain our decision, as well as add documentation with supporting references. In this example, NIST NVD is not wrong in saying that libxml2 is exposed to the CVE, but this raw data is not exactly correct either, because Anaconda has backported a patch and released a special build that addresses this vulnerability. So if you're installing this package from our curated repository, you are actually not exposed to the CVE. So Anaconda is able to provide this kind of unique insight because we build packages from source. So what we just saw in the previous two slides are rather low-level, detailed examples of false positives. False positives are simply false alarms about CVEs, which may seem like they are just a harmless nuisance, but what we'll demonstrate in this mini case study of an actual customer is that false positives pose a significant cost. When we scanned this customer's repo using open source software and uncurated CVE data from NIST NVD, this resulted in 8,000 false positives. Now, if we assume that reviewing each item takes 10 minutes, that comes out to be over half a year of time and over half a year of someone's salary. In corporate environments, data scientists and software engineers usually work with colleagues in cyber to clear security alerts. This means 2 people are involved, at least, so this cost should actually be doubled. So besides the functional impact of blocking you from using packages, false positives cost money, and more importantly, productivity. The good news is, with Anaconda CVE curation, we take care of this for you. So we've seen a few examples of how we have engineered the Anaconda repository to be enterprise grade and help companies leverage open source with confidence, starting from the ground up by vetting and building packages from source, ensuring tamper-free delivery from our server to you, and providing CVE information enhanced with Anaconda's unique insight. One recommendation I would make on how to best utilize CVE information is to take a nuanced approach to CVE management. CVEs come with a severity score ranging from 0 to 10, 10 being the most critical. As a single number, this score is a useful way to filter packages. However, it is also somewhat of a blunt instrument. And in practice, things are not always so clear-cut. In this example, this CVE is actually disputed and is only applicable if the package is used in a specific way. So, depending on your particular circumstances and usage patterns, it might make sense to judiciously make an exception. Anaconda provides these CVE details so that you can make informed and nuanced decisions. Michael, at this point, why don't we turn it over to you so you can share more information about our products.
Thank you, Frank. At this point, I think it would be worthwhile for us to just talk a little bit about the offerings that we provide our customers. First of all, the individual edition, or the Anaconda distribution, as it was previously called, is our free offering. It's a collection of the most popular packages in the data science Python ecosystem, along with a connection to our repository for further package downloads. We also have Team Edition. This is a product that allows you to bring a filtered and curated mirror of our packages, further curated to suit your policies inside your network, so that you can deliver your data scientist with a set of packages that you are satisfied with, that you are comfortable employing. And then we also have an entire Kubernetes-based platform that provides the ability to do development and deployment, schedule jobs, and so forth in a curated and governed central environment. So just some of the offerings that we provide our customers, again, to help them tame the data science ecosystem by using a curated set of packages in a governed and controlled manner. At this point, next steps, just a few things that I want to invite you to do to learn a little bit more about us and about what we do and about what our offerings are. I would encourage you to register for Anaconda Nucleus at anaconda.cloud. Anaconda Nucleus is our home base for all things data science for our users. It is free to sign up. There's no obligation, and it gives you an opportunity to learn more about our offerings, learn more about various data science applications, including example notebooks and webinars and demos and such and so forth. And one more thing in particular I wanted to point out is that some of you may be, you can imagine that with 4 billion package downloads and 25 million users, we have a fair amount of data about the usage of Python and data science packages in particular in the open source world. And we can assemble some of that along with surveys of our users into a state of data science report that we issue every year. You're free to grab the 2021 version of that report at the link we've provided on this slide. And I'd encourage you to grab that. And if you're interested in learning more about how data science is being used today. And with that, I really appreciate the time that we've been given. And I hope we've helped you learn a little something about Anaconda. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Michael and Frank, that was great stuff. Appreciate it. We do have a few questions that have come in here. And while we go through those, I do want to put the poll up just for anything that additional information that people would like about the Anaconda solution. But one of the first questions we have here is they're asking, what if I want to use a package that's not in the Anaconda repository?
Yeah, that's a really good question because with 360,000 packages in the global ecosystem and the number of packages in our repository measured in the five digits actually, I take that back. It's very likely that there will be such packages that you want. There's a couple of things. First of all, I do think it's important to ask seriously how strong the use case is for that particular package in your in your application. If it's not popular enough to be offered in Anaconda or even in our community-driven crowdsourced Conda repository, CondaForge, then you may want to question that a little bit, whether maybe there's a better alternative that is more mature. I did mention CondaForge. CondaForge is a crowdsourced, so it has some of the downsides of PyPI, but it does provide a wider range of packages that are available to install, and you could consider installing that package from there. You can also work with us, and we can build a Conda version of that package for you, and we can even study its exposure to CVEs. And then last but not least, just because we prefer the Conda package format, the Python environments that we generate are compatible with pip. And so you can do a direct install from PyPI if you would like to experiment with a new package that way.
Okay, super. And another question came in from Ross along the exact same lines. Let's see. There was some really interesting discussion about vulnerabilities. When Frank was talking about the nuanced approach. But the question here is, what should I do if a new vulnerability is discovered in a package I already use?
Frank, would you like to take that?
Sure. So the first thing I would caution is to not overreact. Of course, we want to be responsive, but we also need to understand what exactly the exposure is. Right? So looking at those details that we provide would be the first step. The second step would be, if you need to recall a package, do so in a thoughtful way. Right? Don't simply break your application if that is causing greater damage than the potential of the CVE itself. So it's really case by case. Take a look at the details, figure out, does it make sense to remove the package or upgrade for a remediated version, and figure out your alternatives before causing greater damage than the potential of the risk.
Okay, super. Thanks. And probably have time for one more. We've had a lot of discussion about containers today, and there's a question here. Can we use Anaconda packages in Docker containers?
You certainly can, and we do so all the time. In fact, as I mentioned, our enterprise platform is built on Kubernetes, and every single one of our containers has a Conda environment in it. I will say that Python environments in general, and this isn't Conda's fault, but Python environments in general tend to be a little beefier than some of the microservice containers that you might be accustomed to. There are techniques for shaving down the image size of a Python-based Docker container, but it's entirely doable, and we do it quite often, and we even publish reference Docker containers that you can build upon.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Hey, Michael and Frank, thanks so much for coming on. This has been really informative, and appreciate you being here for the EcoCast and giving us the update on Anaconda.
Hey, thank you very much.
And now it's time for the final presentation in the Virtual Environment EcoCast, and our next session comes from Palo Alto Networks. And presenting for Palo Alto is Dennis Payton, Senior Product Marketing Manager. Dennis, welcome to the EcoCast.
Hello, how you doing? Can you guys hear me okay?
Great. You sound loud and clear. Take it away.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are from the world. I know we do a lot of different global presentations, so I just want to make sure I include everybody there. I'm going to talk mainly around the virtual environments and how we protect those virtual environments. Palo Alto is obviously a big security player in the market space, and so that's where we're going to focus on, mainly around the network security and how software firewalls play into the whole thing. So I always like to start out with some easy stuff. You know, we got our data centers that are really nice and pretty out there, but more and more so, those data centers are being virtualized, and as those data centers are converting over to virtual environments, you know, our security needs to change as well. And in addition to that, you know, it's expanding even beyond our data centers and virtualization of our data centers and getting into this multi-cloud, you know, hybrid environments, as you guys all know. Yeah, I'm sure you're quite familiar with that direction of the virtualization. But interestingly, there are a lot of enterprises that are experimenting and using multiple clouds, right? Multiple cloud environments. And this is some information that I found quite interesting, that mainly the enterprises are looking at somewhere between 2 to 5 different clouds environments within their virtual infrastructures. So that's pretty interesting. And it also creates a number of problems for us, right? From a security perspective, things are starting to blur. The lines are starting to blur quite heavily as we integrate these multiple cloud environments and try to manage those multiple cloud environments. And more importantly, how do we secure those multiple cloud environments? So this is one of our popular topics here at Palo Alto Networks, and it's the anatomy or the pathway of an adversarial player, basically trying to penetrate your network and exfiltrate your critical data or create denial of service and disrupt your business, those sorts of things. So from initial reconnaissance, adversarial player will kind of poke holes and try and find your weak spots, get in and intrude, exploit your environment, escalate their own privileges, and move laterally within your environment. Again, in these multi-cloud environments and virtual environments, that's just even expanded exponentially the potential for that penetration. So don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but we got some great sessions on that. But basically what we're trying to avoid is having those adversaries penetrate into our data centers, our private cloud, our public cloud, and any of our virtual machines, our container environments that are hosting critical applications. You know, that's what we're trying to protect. And I wanted to put this slide in because I think it's kind of fun. This is kind of the Pac-Man version of these adversaries penetrating into your data center, your private cloud, and your public cloud. So one thing that is curious that I have a question for you. You know, what do you think is what do you think is in common with these private clouds and public clouds and these virtual environments? And what it is there's no place to put a hardware firewall. One of your most basic security fundamental tools is a firewall. And there's no place to drop a firewall in these virtual environments. These virtual environments expand and grow, scale, and are elastic. And there's just no real place to drop a hardware firewall. So what I want to introduce to you is Palo Alto's network security platform. And this platform is targeted to support all those virtual environments as well as our traditional data centers. So from the get-go, it is a complete platform that has unified management, not only of your security services, but also of your firewalls and the different form factors that take place to support your infrastructure. So on the either side, we've got our traditional hardware firewalls, next generation hardware firewalls, and then we have our edge protection with our SASE But in the middle is what I want to focus on, and that's these software firewalls. Again, what is in common with these? They have a common management platform, a common security that is all cloud delivered amongst these three form factors of hardware, software, and SASE. And they share a best-in-class security protection for your users and your applications. And they're completely integrated, into this platform, and give you the opportunity to really streamline your security operations. Just a bit on the security services. Threat protection is provided there, and that is your traditional intrusion prevention, right, systems. WF is our Wildfire product, which gives you a sandboxing security place to explore unknowns. Advanced URL and DNS security is our web-facing security. And then we've got other security in there as well, like data loss prevention, SaaS application security, and IoT security. So again, in one platform, you have all the security that's necessary. But as I said, we're going to focus really in on these software firewalls and how they apply to our protecting our virtual environments, which is the topic of today. So I'm going to cover a little bit about the public cloud, the private cloud, and the virtual branch, and just lightly on the container side of the security and how that kind of fits in. I'm going to keep this at a high level, and then later on I'll tell you how we can get more of a deep dive into in particular, the private cloud side of things. So back to the platform, how does the security actually work? Again, we're going to focus on the software firewalls. Software firewalls play in the public cloud, private cloud, virtual branch, containers I just talked about. But the security is actually connected deeply in with our cloud-delivered security services. And that provides all the kind of traditional threat intelligence, as well as backed up by our Unit 42 for kind of the human aspect. And right now, the big thing that's going on is Russia-Ukraine. Our Unit 42 is really honing in on what's going on with that as far as cyber attacks. And all that information gets fed into this, as well as the AI, ML aspects that play into our cloud security. So threat prevention and Wildfire are kind of our traditional network security. Advanced URL filtering, DNS security is our web side of things, web security. And what happens is when the firewalls detect anything that's unknown in your network traffic, it's basically escalated up into that cloud, and then what's delivered back from those security services is a consistent security prevention. And that happens across all the firewalls, regardless of where those firewalls are deployed. If they're deployed in the public cloud, private cloud, or your virtual branches, even out to the 5G security for some of the service providers, that is all automated for you. So the main thing with our security firewalls is that they are cloud ready form factors, right? It's software, it's not a hardware, so you can deploy these things wherever they need to be. Because they are software, they can be automated in deployment. And so as your cloud breathes and is elastic and scales in and out, these software firewalls can support that scalability. So getting used to this platform, sorry. I want to talk a little bit more about this consistent threat protection here. Again, wherever the VM series is deployed, we provide that inline network security. Whether it's your hybrid or multi-cloud environments, you have that same consistent security. It gives you the ability to provide the same user experience to all of your customers and your employees. as well as give you the consistent threat prevention across all of these platforms, supporting the multi-cloud and hybrid environments. So I want to touch a little bit about each of these areas, public clouds, and I'm going to probably start with the private clouds here first because that's my main focus, and then end up with some of the virtual cloud branches and how we integrate with those systems. So let's take a look at that. This is our private cloud integration. One of the main things with our software firewalls is how do we extend those software firewalls and integrate with specific platforms. So in our private cloud technologies, virtual technologies to support private cloud, there's three main areas here that I'm showing. One on the left-hand side is our integrations with hypervisors. On the right-hand side with our integrations with software-defined networks. And then in the middle, typical container integrations for the private cloud. We have additional containers that I'll talk about here in a minute for the public side. But the majority of our customers are really in that VMware, ESXi, vSphere world. And so that's one of our dominant integrations for our customers. But we also support KVM, which is probably the second runner, especially in virtual branches. And of course, we support Nutanix and Azure Stack as well. On the software-defined network side of things, NSX is one of our top players. Cisco probably plays in there next. Again, deep integrations with both of those platforms to provide that security within those virtual environments. And then, of course, we support Nutanix Flow and OpenStack as well on the software-defined networking side of things. Then in the container side, the two dominant platforms are Rancher and VMware's Tanzu. And so those are and this is kind of our, what I call our private cloud virtual technology portfolio. And we've got some others as well, but these are the dominant ones. On the public cloud side of things, we support all the cloud service providers, the main ones, AWS, obviously the big gorilla. Azure is the second one that's kind of the main integration there. And then, of course, Google Cloud, IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud, and if you're in Asia Pac, Alibaba's very, very prominent out there. So again, deep integrations here. We also have are working with these cloud service providers to actually integrate them directly into their platform. So we got some stuff we're going to be announcing here with AWS. Google Cloud, we just announced a couple months ago a Google Cloud IDS platform that just automatically puts that right directly into your Google Cloud environment. Again, just expanding on the container integrations, again with Amazon, Google Cloud, and Azure and OpenShift are all supported, so you can get down and support those containers, security for those containers. So the three main use cases for these software firewalls in protecting the network is kind of your inbound and your outbound access. Blocking attackers from breaking in is kind of the first thing you want to do, right? So protecting that inbound. And then on the outbound, again, with the security for data loss protection and those sorts of things, we're stopping exfiltration and keeping the C2 traffic out. But it's equally important to protect your east-west lateral propagation if something does happen to penetrate your perimeter. Doing segmentation and keeping that east-west protection is critical. This is kind of just reinforces what I was just talking about, those three different areas. So right at the perimeter, the VM series can be deployed to protect your perimeter. We have some acceleration, traffic acceleration tools, as well as something called intelligent traffic offload that can be an optional piece in there to accelerate performance. And then number two there is the VM series in particular protects against the east-west traffic or the lateral movement of security issues between virtual machines. Our CN series is what is used for that container protection and protecting those applications that are in containers. Again, the difference is we're protecting that lateral movement within containers. And what I'm showing here is kind of like your core business applications like enterprise resource planning, your product line management systems, your quality management systems. That is your gold business applications with your critical data that's underneath it. And so I'm not going to touch too much today on zero trust, but all of these can be managed through a zero trust policies that are supported by the PAN OS in our firewalls. And then again, adding on to the security applications to that. On the branch offices side of things, the virtual environment, I want to talk a little bit about this because this is an up-and-coming area. We just had some great conversations with some customers that are really looking to deploy this out. So in this environment, our VM series, our software firewalls, in particular VM series, is deployed on a UCPE, a universal customer premise equipment. Typical hypervisors out there, the dominant one is KVM. And then we also have some ESXi that's out there as well. But again, these have to run on a specific platform that's supporting other applications. So the CPE is kind of generalized. And we have partners that we work with, Ciena, Cisco, Citrix, VeloCloud, Versa, et cetera, that provide these UCP packages. We have partners that actually combine the whole solution together and package up the VM series with the hypervisor, such as Siemens as well. And what it looks like is on the left-hand side, this is a busy slide, I know, but on the left-hand side, we've got the virtual branch in general. And so that CPE is deployed out there. We deploy VM series. A lot of our customers do an optional SD-WAN security feature with that to protect all those IoT devices and the employees are out into the branch. On the left-hand side, we also have solutions, and what I'm showing here is the Siemens box, the Siemens rugged COM box for critical infrastructure. This is your oil and gas, your utilities, water, electric utilities. We all know that the Colonial Pipeline that got hacked last year, these types of solutions are specifically designed around protecting that critical infrastructure. In this case, we're using the RX 1500 series from Rugged COM, and the VM series is deployed on top of that. And again, allows you to protect those operational technology field devices, the intelligent electronic devices that are deployed out in those critical infrastructure, any wireless field devices that are out there in that infrastructure. And these boxes are hardened for temperature, environment, humidity, electrostatic discharge, those sorts of things, and they're all very hardened for those environments. So that's that one. Again, sorry I'm a little bit rusty, but it's coming off vacation, but I just wanted to kind of let you know that from a virtual environment and protecting your virtual environments, Palo Alto's software firewalls are really deeply integrated into these cloud environments. All the major cloud service providers the dominant hypervisors, the dominant software-defined networks are all deeply integrated, and that's the value that the VM series brings. We also have a cloud-like consumption model for these, which we call software firewall, next generation firewalls credits, that allow you to actually move your software firewalls very, very easily within the environments and reconfigure your security as needed. Again, the form factors, the two main form factors for our virtual environments are to protect virtual machines and to protect Kubernetes of container nodes as well. Because it is software, automation is easily used for deployment. We support all the kind of standard orchestration and automation tools out there, AWS CloudFormation, Terraform, Ansible. We've got a customer that really deploys a lot of firewalls with their managed cloud services they provide to their end customers that use Ansible and Terraform. And this allows, these tools allow you to automate your scaling, and with, as I mentioned, the cloud's delivered services, you have that ability to have your policies automated and changes automatically delivered. One of the main things that happens in virtualization is as you turn virtual machines up and down, your IP addresses change as well. So we have a feature within our software firewalls called dynamic address groups that allow for that flexibility and the changing of those IP addresses automatically, all automatically handled, so your security is always in place. So back to our little Pac-Man diagram. Again, I didn't go into a lot of detail here, but the main component here in your private and public clouds is these virtual firewalls, the software firewalls, both the virtual machine, our VM series, and our container node CN series firewalls support protecting all those critical applications out there in your network. And with that, with any Palo Alto network firewall, we are best in class. We're considered best in class. We just announced last November a 10-year running with Gartner Magic Quadrant for firewalls, being the top leader in innovation and delivery. As I mentioned, these things are very easily managed with central management that cover both your private and public cloud, as well as your virtual branch environments and any other traditional data centers. And in particular, these software firewalls are cloud integrated and automated, as we just talked about. So with that, I think we'll close things up. If you really want to dive in, I know we just gave a high level. I've got the more technical guys that are lined up for a design and deploy Zero Trust for your enterprise private cloud. And we're going to dive deeper into the Zero Trust aspects as well as the more technical aspects that, I just cover the high level marketing. But if you're interested, this is taking place on March 29th. It's a good hands-on lab that we'll be doing. We'll look at the virtual machines. How do you protect those applications, the virtual machines, and how do you protect containers as well? And for those of you that really want to get a little more hands-on, we have an ultimate test drive of a number of our products, including our software firewalls. We have a VM series free 30-day trial if you want to try this in your ESXi environment or in your KVM environments. We have a number of quick labs as well that we can get some hands-on as well. So with that, I think I'm out of time, but thank you for listening. I know I'm a little bit rusty today because I just came off vacation, but I hope you enjoyed it.
Dennis, I thought you sounded pretty good. So if you hadn't told me you were on vacation, I wouldn't have known. But I really enjoyed I really enjoyed your Pac-Man diagrams, but also how you really enumerated how the Palo Alto firewalls address all the different threats in different public and private cloud environments. Very informative.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and I did want to leave the poll up here for any additional information anybody would like about the Palo Alto network solution. And while we leave that up there, we do have a couple of questions for you. One of them is they're asking they don't have an SDN solution. Can they still segment and protect their application with the VM series?
Yes. Simple answer. Yeah, so I think as I mentioned, many of our customers don't have an SDN in their environment. They just go with the hypervisor mode, right? And one of our, like I mentioned, we've done this Zero Trust roadshow for a couple of sessions already, and the dominant virtual environment technologies out there is VM series, or excuse me, too many VMs. VMware's ESXi platform with the vSphere. One of our main customers, there's a case study up on our website from US Signal. They themselves use VMware's ESXi environment for their own data center use, but they are also a managed cloud provider as a business. So they have over 400 customers that are also ESXi, and all of those customers, including US Signal's core business, is protected by Palo Alto VM series firewalls. It's a great case study. They really get into a lot of the detail of how it has impacted their business, the consistency of policies delivered not only to their business but also to their customers, and then how their customers really just are so excited about the consistent management and the visibility of our firewalls.
Okay.
So, yeah,
great.
we do.
Hey, another one, they're asking if you could summarize the difference between the VM series and the CN series.
Yeah, sure. So they're just two different form factors, right? And one form factor is optimized for virtual machines, as we just talked about ESXi or the SDN type of virtual environments. The CN series in particular is built as a container, runs as a container, runs in a Kubernetes cluster environment to protect all those traffic between your Kubernetes nodes and the pods within those, the application pods within those. They can work in conjunction with each other. Again, they're both managed by the same managed platform. They both have the same policies delivered through our primary management platform called Panorama, and that's really the difference. Again, CN stands for container node, VM stands for virtual machine, and those two series to support those two different virtual environments. Does that make sense?
And if you're running containers, is the CN series, is it running inside each container, or is it somewhere else? Is it in between them somehow?
We have a couple different ways that they can be deployed. In general, I think that the dominant one that our customers are using is to deploy them in a Kubernetes node itself and have that be kind of the central node that the containers communicate through. But they can also be distributedly deployed across the container nodes within the Kubernetes cluster. So,
gotcha. Great. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for Dennis. But if somebody does want to get started, you had I put the slide back up with the QR codes about the Ultimate Test Drive and the demo and the free VM series for 30 days and the CN series. So
yeah, if anybody wants to if anybody wants to link in with me and ask questions that way, I can get more technical folks on the more technical questions if needed.
Yeah, tremendous. There are a couple of questions there in the console that unfortunately we don't have time to get to, but yeah, if you could hang around for a minute and answer those people, I'm sure they would appreciate it. We would appreciate it. Yeah.
Sure.
Well, Dennis, thanks a lot for coming on. Really appreciate this this update.
Sure. Have a great day.
Okay, and now it's time for our final prize drawing. And the winner of the last $500 Amazon gift card of the day is Ross Vanderklok from Michigan. So congratulations to Ross, as well as our earlier winners, Amber and Neil. We'll be in touch about claiming your prizes. And at this point, we do want to thank everybody for being here. And we've got some questions about, all three winners. So I'm just going to take a second here to post those names. Give me 1 second. Okay, so the three winners of the $500 Amazon gift cards are up there in the Q&A portion. Once again, congratulations to our winners. And I do want to remind everybody about the Actual Tech Media 10 on Tech podcast. Great way to keep up to date with what's going on in tech in sort of bite-sized chunks that you can listen to on the treadmill or, however you listen to podcasts. Also want to mention that if you were listening today and you'd like to sponsor an event like this, please contact us at connect@actualtechmedia.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd be happy to let you know how you can participate in an event like this. And I do want to alert everybody to our next event. It's the Securing Cloud Environments EcoCast. That'll be next Tuesday, starting at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And finally, just a reminder that you can refer a friend or coworker to our online events, and you both could win a $300 Amazon gift card. So there's the link there at the bottom. Just click on that if you've got somebody in mind. It's a great way to get them connected and help them find out more about the types of tech solutions that our events specialize in. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I do want to thank all of our presenters today for putting together such great presentations and demos and offering their insights during Q&A. Also want to thank all of our participants for making this event possible: Progress, Veeam, Rubric, Druva, Rapid7, Anaconda, and Palo Alto. And finally, we'd like to thank all of you for attending today's EcoCast from Actual Tech Media and for all of your great questions. That concludes today's event. We'll see you next time.